going in now into our regular meeting of the Holyoke School Committee. It's Monday, June 21st, 5:41 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy. Mr. Sheehan.
Present.
Ms. Lefebvre.
Present.
Ms. Brunel.
Here.
Ms. Tensley Williams.
Present.
Ms. Burks.
Present.
Ms. Feliciano Sims. Mr. Wellahan.
Here.
Mr. Callamore. Mr. Krishane. Ms. Brennan. And Ms. Puello.
Thank you very much, Ms. Garcia. So, good evening to the public. I just want to read a few things here. So, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, I'm hereby informing all attendees that a video and audio recording is being made of the meeting, and the meeting is being live streamed and run live on the city's community TV channel. I just want to let the public know that, as you can see, there are some members of the school committee that are present in person at the Fifield Room, as well as we have members who are attending remotely. So we do have a quorum. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the Student Showcase, Opportunity Academy.
Yeah, today we're going to have a student showcase with our Opportunity Academy students, and I'm wondering if we could get Mickey Buell. Actually, it's George Smith. I'm sorry.
Hey, thank you everyone for having us. We're really excited to be here. If we could also make Danielle Rasson and Jacob Ortiz Rosario active participants, that would be great. That's a teacher and a student who will be joining us today. So we're really, really excited to be here today. We have a couple of students who are going to share briefly about two projects that they have worked on with us in the past year. And we are going to leave a lot of time at the end for questions. You know, we play a very important role in the district, and through the year of remote learning have learned a lot about some roles that we play as well. And so I'm sure there are a lot of questions for us since we were here a couple of years ago. We want to leave plenty of time for that, but most importantly, we also want to have a chance for you to hear from our students. We are going to be playing a little bit of musical chairs here because that's how we were able to figure out the technology on our end. And so I'm going to have Danielle introduce herself first, then I'm going to have Nicole, our math teacher, introduce herself, and then I'll have the students introduce themselves as they come up. So Danielle, if you want to introduce yourself briefly.
Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Rasson. I am the English teacher at Opportunity Academy. And this is my 8th year with the district. Prior to Opportunity Academy, we were the adult ed program.
And I'm Nicole McNeil. I'm the math teacher for Opportunity Academy, and this is my 9th year here. Thank you.
All right, and what I'm going to do is, as the students come up, I'm going to share, or as the students start to speak, I'm going to share a link to their projects so that you can see what they're speaking about. We're going to give them each a couple minutes to just sort of talk about the project, about the work they did with their teachers to make it possible. And then, like I said, leave plenty of time for questions and comments at the end. So our first student who's going to share today is Jacob. Jacob was a new student with us from came over from Holyoke High School at the beginning of the school year, so a really interesting time to join us. And he's going to talk a little bit about a piece of slam poetry that he actually had published in the Boston Globe this winter. So Jacob, I'm going to hand it over to you. I will link your article and you know, just share whatever you feel like sharing today. Okay.
Well, I'm Jacob Ortiz. I was in the slam poetry class with Jeffrey. Just a little bit like the background for the poem. Kind of got inspiration with the Corona and like just like the changes from going from like physically going to school to being behind a screen. So I wanted to kind of like with the kind of express that feeling with the poem in a way. Um, like what helped me get like that transition was the school, the academy. It like I was able to connect with the teachers. It was way easier for me to be able to actually write that. I got so much help from Christy, my writing coach, and also Jeffrey, which we went over the poem multiple times and all that. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks. And Jacob also worked very closely on that poem with Usman Hamidi, who is a award-winning slam poet. So one of the things that we like to do with our project-based learning is connect students to experts in the field. And so given that we were able to work a lot with people via Zoom this year, which was a different addition for us, Jacob was really able to work with an expert slam poet who was located in Boston. So to have an expert poet reading his poetry and giving him direct feedback was great. And as I shared in the chat, there's a link to sort of his draft, which seems to be projecting on the screen right now. And then there's also a link in the chat for the Boston Globe publication of that same poem. And Jacob's really not doing justice for how much work he put into it. It was a lot of editing and work with poet and with a great editor at the Boston Globe who helped him get it published. All right, the next student who is going to share is Josh Fernandez. So Josh is a recent graduate for us. He is, well, he'll tell you a little bit about what he's doing now, but he's working towards getting into an agriculture school, particularly one of the better ones here in Massachusetts, and is just an incredible young graduate, incredible story for us. And he's going to share a little bit about a project he did in our navigation math class in the winter. And Nicole, who spoke before, is his math teacher. So Josh, why don't you come on up here and you can share from here. Oh, sorry, let me just share that real quick before Josh joins us. Make sure the settings are open for you. And Josh's work on this project starts on page 5 of what I just shared. Okay, Josh, why don't you come on over here?
Hi, my name is Joshua Fernandez. I'm a recent graduate of Oway Academy, and I'm going to be talking about the scavenger hunt voyage project that I did in Nicole's class. I did it in the winter for her navigations class, and it was basically using what we learned about plotting points on a graph and adding it to a scavenger hunt for us to better like show that we understood it and to kind of like put it in a real world experience so we can kind of really relate to it. It was really very hard to do at first, I can admit. At first it was really hard to understand the slope intercept form and a mistaken point slope form. Those two were a little bit tricky to get in and understand them, but as time went on, they worked right by next to us, and they always gave us really good feedback and always made sure that we understood it. They were always there making sure that we understood what we were saying and what we were learning, which really benefited us and benefited me. The most fun part was learning about the domain. The domain was very fun because it was very easy to, at least for me, to understand it after doing all the slope forms. I would say overall the project was fun though the most, just because it helped me kind of like understand it in a real wave form. So for me to understand it and be able to use it outside of school helped me. actually see the purpose of learning it and why it's important to learn it instead of just like, brushing it over and not really using it in real life. Um, and yeah, since I graduated from the program, I'm enrolling into Penn Foster for veterinary assistant. It's pretty fun so far, so I'm expecting to finish that up and go to school for horticulture in the Stockbridge School of Agriculture. That's what I'm really hoping to get into. I'm building connections within the Holy Community College and going into transition to college program to, just get me prepared for my career. And I'm really excited about it, honestly. And I'm really thankful for the OA Academy for giving me this opportunity to finish and to give me the skills that I needed for, real life. Well, thank you.
So I just wanted to echo some of what Josh had said. And so he was a leader in the classroom. And so when they had to do their scavenger hunt, they had to work together with partners and try and solve the clues to see where they were going on their voyage. And so he really like led his group and really, like there was sometimes a little bit of like conflicting math terminology or just kind of where they were going, and they were able to kind of get through it. And their group, it was like one of those moments as a teacher, you just kind of sat back and the students were doing the work, and it was awesome. And the only other thing I'll say about this this project was at first, at Opportunity Academy, math levels are all over the place. And so just trying to find some kind of high level engaging curriculum was kind of a challenge. And so we were able to use this, and there's even a trigonometry piece that we were able to use in the second iteration of this, including adding in the cultural piece. And so as students were starting to figure out their voyages on the map, they were able to do a little bit of research about one of the countries that was there. So it was a really rewarding experience the first time, and then the second time around we were able to make it a little bit better. Thank you.
All right. And we want to leave plenty of time for questions and comments. Just as a reminder, OA is actually made up of 3 campuses. We are waiting on a student from Lighthouse, which is one of the schools where our students attend as a part of Opportunity Academy. Students also attend Gateway at HCC, Gateway at HCC. We do not have a student presenting from there, but we do have staff from the Success Center, which is the 3rd campus. We'll hopefully very shortly have staff and a student from Lighthouse. And Mickey Buell, our executive director, has joined the call as well. And so, we're open and here for any questions or comments you all have. And just really appreciate you giving the time for our students to present some of their work as well.
Great, thank you so much. So one of the things that I did forget to mention at the beginning of the meeting is members are to use the icon for raising their hands if they have any questions or comments, because I am watching over that. And those that are on by phone, I will be addressing you independently. So are there any questions or comments for the Opportunity Academy at this time? None in here at Dean Tech.
Comments.
Okay, Ms. Tensley Williams.
Yes, I just would like to congratulate the students. They have put a lot of work into their presentations, and we just want you to know that we're there for you. Keep up the good work, and you're going to go far. Thank you for everything you do, and God bless you guys.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tensley Williams. Ms. Brunel, I know you're on by phone. Did you have any question or comment for Opportunity Academy? I think I lost her. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I know for me, I'm very impressed with Opportunity Academy, the 3 different options that students have. I know a lot of times it's very difficult for students to really progress within the general education, and they need to find something more individualized. My own daughter attended Lighthouse, and Lighthouse holds a strong place in my heart. I wish we could have seen one of the students from Lighthouse come here this evening and present as well. But I thank you guys for all that you're doing, because we're not leaving any student behind. We're making sure that we're giving them all the options available to them, and making it possible for them to graduate. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Wait a minute. I see only one that I know I can get. Okay. Alrighty. So, being no other member of the board has any questions or comments, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't look to my right. I forgot you were there, Mr. Soto. Mr. Soto?
Sorry, I just wanted to echo everything you said, Mildred. Takes a lot of courage to get up here, and I commend the students for coming prepared to the meeting. And I also want to thank all the staff over at Opportunity Academy. This program has just been amazing in re-engaging some of our students and having the flexibility required to keep them engaged and get them to graduate. We're doing amazing work over there, and we were able to see a couple of students of the program tonight. So I want to thank all of you.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you guys again for coming here tonight. Is there anyone, did the other person get to come in to present, or we didn't?
They have just arrived downstairs, but I think, we don't want to hold you guys up. I know that it's 6 o'clock already, and we
So-
appreciate it. But we will share some of her work with you guys, if that's all right. We'll share it with Sam maybe, and she can share with the rest.
I'm more than willing that we can go through the public comment, giving them time to get upstairs. If you
Okay.
guys are willing to hold on, and we'll go through public comment, and then we'll come
Okay.
back.
All right,
to
thank
her.
you.
Okay, no, absolutely. All right, so we're going to move on to public comment. And so with that said, obviously, if we were in person, we would have people sign up prior to public comment. And from there, I would call upon the names. But obviously, we're doing a hybrid model, so we're learning what students and staff had to go through these past couple months trying to do this hybrid way. So what I am asking is, I know I do have some who have already submitted, and I know they want to speak tonight, but if they can still raise their hands, and anyone else raise their hands on the attendee side that would like to present in public comment, so that way I can keep track, and I will be calling you one by one. Now, when we call you, we will be transferring you over, and your camera should be on, and then you will speak so that everyone in the public can hear you, as well as here at Dean Tech and those on Zoom. Please state your name and where you're from, or what topic you're going to be speaking up on. And address, sorry. So hopefully, I think this is going to go smooth. So we're going to go ahead and start. And the first person I'm going to call upon, but I don't see that person here because I did get an email. Oh, I found him. Mr. Nick Cream, I hope I said the last name correctly. If we can transfer Mr. Nick Cream over. Let me know when he's come over. Oh, okay. So there's Mr. Nick Cream. So I just want to also remind everyone for public comment, we did receive packets, we received letters. So each Each person can come up and speak for 2 minutes. And obviously, the school committee cannot have a direct dialogue during that time. This is where the public speaks. We're taking notes. So that I don't want you guys to feel that we're ignoring you. We're not ignoring you. We're writing down information because when this topic comes up later on in the agenda, then that's where the school committee can have more dialogue on it. Okay? So with that being said, Mr. Cream, you can go right ahead. Again, I hope I said your name right.
You did. Thank you so much. So I have to say my address as well. Is that right?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Okay. So my address is 7 Warner Street, apartment number 2 in South Hadley, Massachusetts. And I'm currently an ethnic studies U.S. history teacher at Dean Tech High School. And tonight I'll be addressing the recent decision to eliminate the ethnic studies program director position. So I'm just going to give a little bit of context and read a little bit of a letter that the ethnic studies teachers have written together. On May 6th, the acting ethnic studies program director was told that ethnic studies would become a department with a department head and that their position as program director would be eliminated. The cabinet's justification for this was that the district needs to have equity across all departments. A week later, on May 14th, an all-staff email announced that the district will be requiring all students to take ethnic studies, social studies classes in their 7th and 8th grade. Multiple stakeholders have sent letters to Holyoke Public Schools leadership to pause this decision, but these have not been heeded. Asking for your support is our next step in the democratic process. Today, you are going to hear from multiple stakeholders representing groups who are impacted by the decision to eliminate the ethnic studies program director position. I'm now going to share an excerpt from a letter sent to the cabinet and signed by 12 ethnic studies teachers in Holyoke Public Schools. As ethnic studies educators, we are deeply concerned about the elimination of the director role and the ways in which this decision impacts our students and the sustainability of our work. The Ethnic Studies program is so much more than an academic program. It encompasses community engagement while tapping into the community cultural wealth of the greater Holyoke area. A full-time director is needed to continue creating and building a program that includes powerful community and university partners, brilliant guest speakers from the community, transformative field trip experiences for students, the recruitment and retention of expert teachers in the field of ethnic studies, as well as training, coaching, and curriculum development. Asking a department head to teach multiple classes and to take on these responsibilities is impossible. They simply will not have the capacity to ensure our students receive the curricular opportunities and the qualified educators they deserve. We call on the school committee to recommend to the superintendent and the cabinet to pause this decision, to seek input from the Ethnic Studies Community Advisory Board, and ultimately to partner with the Ethnic Studies CAB and educators to conduct a broad search for a qualified full-time ethnic studies program director. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, so now if we can move over JR.
Hi there, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for letting me speak. I'm writing on the basis of the ethnic studies, and I also live in Holyoke onto Lowell Street, apartment number 3. I'm a longtime resident of Holyoke, went to the Holyoke High School, Holyoke Public Schools, all that. And I'm writing as a former student, right? And for what it's worth, I hope my testimony will not only be of value, but it'll be a wake-up call for all you who receive this. To some or all, this might be difficult to hear, difficult enough that it'll make you, just phase out. I anticipate this reaction, so I urge you, do the bare minimum. Listen, read, and analyze what I'm presenting. I'm a proudly dropout student of the Holyoke High School system, even though I graduated. Just barely graduating through the Gateway program at 21 years old, I consider myself a student that slipped through the cracks, as they say. Ethnic Studies, Palante, Presente, and the Gateway program all contributed massively It's my journey avoiding the crack that many of the non-English speakers slip through. I can tell you with certainty that without just one and only one of these programs, I would have slipped through that crack. Holyoke is 52% Hispanic and Latino. As the crisis of capitalism and imperialism increase, emigration from Latin countries is to increase as well. Holyoke is known as a safe haven for Latinos of all creeds, as we know. In the next 10 years, we'll see this firsthand, this effect. We see that Holyoke, specifically HPS, has not done nearly enough to help our kids of our first through fifth generation immigrants of our future populations. If ethnic studies is to be done with here in the Holyoke public school system, then it is a symbolic gesture of the administration that leads it. It is a symbolic gesture that none of the folks who are in the positions of power didn't do enough to save it, that those in charge did not lead others to advocate on the basis of saving, preserving a culture. The symbolic gesture is a form of compliance with white supremacy. I'll second and even add to what a professor or a teacher said in his letter. Quote, I'm aware that nobody is proposing to do away with ethnic studies. Maybe not on paper, but I assure you in practice, that is essentially what you're doing with this move. In relation to this statement, I will add that you all who receive this are not intentionally, maybe, compliant or for white supremacy. Without understanding the systemic racism that is produced constantly by this country and its peoples, that it might seem that you do your due diligence to fight against it in your own ways. I anticipate that most who will hear this will go about their lives without batting an eye towards white supremacy. I hope to be proven wrong, but from my experience at Holyoke Public Schools, this is not the case, and I doubt it will be the case. By any chance that you do wish to combat this, I ask you to organize and urge district leadership to pause their decision and collaborate with ES ethnic studies leaders, students, and community members on the basis of furthering the future of such a program. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, JR. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me on that end when I don't put on the microphone. The next person that I'm calling is Jose Lugo.
Kelly, hola, hello. So I am also addressing the changes in ethnic studies. My name is Jose Lugo. I'm a resident of Amherst, 52 Jeffrey Lane. And so with permissions of the Four Winds and my ancestors and the First Nation ancestors of this land, I'm here to speak about ethnic studies. And first, I'd like to address the young people who are most affected by this change. As you know, ethnic studies was born out of resistance to unjust educational practices. And this decision by a few HPS administrators is no different and is a misuse of what equity and anti-racist education mean. I thank you, the young ones, for the work to resist this poorly thought out decision. You make the community proud. Next, to the ethnic studies teachers, collaborators, and the Community Action Board, the CAB, thank you for providing the youth with the direction and that has intimidated administration. Your efforts will resonate beyond today because you have planted the seeds of critical thinking, just as those who have come before us have. To Dana, I thank you for tapping into bringing forth the power of all the people you've influenced, nurturing the young ones in a way that you have. It's been meaningful for me, and I've watched you and learned much from you. And finally, to you, the school committee, we call on you to recommend to the superintendent and the cabinet to pause this decision, because ethnic studies has only scratched the surface of what is possible. Consider your vision as a committee member. Imagine students applying social emotional skills to embrace mathematics as an act of liberation. It's possible, given the foundational work that has been done. Read the student survey data and hold on to this fact. 58.6% of students surveyed feel they are being better prepared for college in their ethnic studies classes. I believe that each of us here share that hope for the youth of Holyoke. So pause this decision and support the students in a truly equitable and anti-racist manner. Partner with the CAB to complete a broad search for a qualified full-time coordinator, one who will continue to expand on the practices that challenge students and expand on their skills and support their vision of a future filled with hope. We all need hope. Pause this decision and join the growing voice that resists this change. Seek the input from the community and become a strong partner of ethnic studies and the amazing educators who are eager to do this work. Lasso Kamati. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose Lugo. The next person will be Paul Schroeder Rodriguez.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. My name is Paul Schroeder Rodriguez. I live in Amherst, 44 Chapel Road. I am a professor of Spanish and Latinx and Latin American Studies at Amherst College. And I will read from a letter written by local college professors who have worked with ethnic studies in the past. We are partners with Holyoke Ethnic Studies Program and are deeply concerned with the serious negative consequences of the decision to eliminate the program's director position. As community partners, we have three main concerns. Our first concern is the impact the decision will have on students, as we have heard from JR. Our second concern has to do with the argument that ethnic studies does not support student literacy and academic excellence, when in fact, there is ample evidence of the many positive effects that a robust ethnic studies program has on literacy development and overall academic achievement, including higher education, higher graduation rates, and attendance to college. Our third and final concern has to do with the future of community partnerships. Growing and maintaining community partnerships opens opportunities for ethnic studies students to engage in service learning and field work, and to envision better lives for themselves and their communities. This is intensive work that requires a director, as many other districts recognize. For example, Boston Public Schools recently appointed an ethnic studies coordinator as a full-time position with no teaching responsibilities, recognizing that the work of building and maintaining an effective ethnic studies program is really full-time work. For all these reasons, we call on you, the school committee, to recommend to the superintendent and the cabinet to pause on this decision, to seek input from the Ethnic Studies Community Advisory Board, and to ultimately partner with us and with HBS teachers to conduct a broad search for a qualified, full-time ethnic studies program director. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker will be Johan Vega.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak to the school committee. I am Johan Rashibega, and as a member of the Palante CAP group, I want to share with you on behalf of my fellow CAP members and in support of the Ethnic Studies teachers, students, and its director, the following statement. Many of us have been connected to the Holyoke Public Schools for many years and have watched good initiatives rise and fall as leadership and priorities change. We are frustrated and saddened that we find ourselves in the familiar position of fighting to preserve hard-won gains. We would much rather be part of a conversation about how to build on the Ethnic Studies program successes to bring more resources, more partnerships, more community connections, to think creatively about how ethnic studies can support and build up other courses and departments in the middle and high schools. We will even be open to discuss with you and others the pros and cons of restructuring the program into a department. We urge you to move away from this pattern of starts and stops and to instead commit to and put sustained resources into initiatives that are working and moving us towards an anti-racist future. We can't think of a more powerful and transformative initiative to invest in than the Ethnic Studies program. We call on the school committee to recommend to the superintendent and the cabinet to pause on this decision, to seek input from the Ethnic Studies Community Advisory Board, and ultimately partner with the Ethnic Studies CAP and educators to conduct a broad search for a qualified full-time Ethnic Studies program director. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Johan. Just a friendly reminder, if you want to speak in public comment, please use the raise hand icon, because I do have a few public comment letters directly here. I do see the people in the audience part of it, but I do not want to call upon you without knowing whether you wanted to speak in front of the public or I'm reading your letter. So I'm going to go with the next hand up, and that is Luke Midnight Woodward.
Hi, just one sec. Okay, my name is Luke Woodward. I've worked in the Holyoke Public Schools at Holyoke High School North for about 10 years. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of the Anti-Racism Leadership Team at Holyoke High School, which is a group of faculty, staff, and administrators from North, Dean, and OA campuses. Our team is among those who have raised our concerns with Dr. Mahoney and Mr. Soto regarding the recent decision to eliminate the Ethnic Studies Director position. We'd like to share a couple of our concerns with you briefly. We've yet to see any meaningful action in response to our concerns. First, so we've witnessed over the years Holyoke Public Schools attempting to engage community through an equity task force, parent advisory groups, all of these things that we've really seen folks struggle to engage the community in, and really struggle to see parents and families and students invest in an authentic way. Then along comes ethnic studies, which you now have students and community cherishing, where some of our most marginalized students feel authentic ownership over their education for the first time. So you have this. Then you have the superintendent and a few members of his cabinet making a decision without any community input to radically change the program, saying it's in the best interest of the program, and basically insinuating that students, families, community, and those who've invested and built into the program don't know what's best for that program. Now, we understand that top-down decision-making is sometimes necessary in a large institution, and not every decision can have, the entire community's input. However, when it comes to ethnic studies, the lack of input in this process is itself part of systemic racism, and it undermines our school and district's efforts to challenge racism and meaningfully engage our students and families. Why would a student or a family get engaged in the future if they can pour their heart and soul into a program and then have it flipped in a second by those at the top? Our second point we'd like to share. We'd like to address the argument that this change will create more, quote, equity between Holyoke High School's departments. If math and history and science don't have a director, why should ethnic studies? Well, what is actually being described is equality, everyone getting the same thing. Equity and equality are not the same thing. Equity means putting resources where they are needed and tailoring those resources to the need. Suggesting that everyone should get the same thing or the same resources might appear more fair or equal. When you're trying to work inside of an education system after 400 years of slavery, genocide, and the whitewashing of the history taught in the school, this idea of equality or equity misses the point. So the anti-racism team is in consensus to urge a pause to this decision to gather meaningful stakeholder input. And then because we've lost Dana Altschuler through this process, which has frankly been quite inhumane given her years of service to our community, we now need to pause and search for a qualified full-time ethnic studies program director to carry this work forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Luke Woodward. The next person I have is, and I apologize if I do not pronounce your name correctly, Marie Brazo, or
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
yes, we can.
My name is Marie Brazo, and I'm an alumni of the Holyoke School System, and I live at 1016 Chicopee Street, Chicopee. I am speaking to you as a former student of Holyoke Public Schools and a strong advocate of the Ethnic Studies program. I was recently made aware of the decision to eliminate the Ethnic Studies program director position, which has been held by my good friend and my former teacher, Dana Altschuler. And while I understand this couldn't have been an easy decision, I urge you to see that it must be reversed. I'm sure you're aware of the close-knit community the program has fostered, and you've already heard many personal testimonies to the program's success. I urge you to hear one more. I myself took my first ethnic studies course in the 8th grade at E.M. White School with Dana. Though at the time it was not an official ethnic studies course, it sparked my interest and was a safe space for new ideas. As a student at Holyoke High School, I once again sat in an ethnic studies course taught by Dana. Outside of the classroom, the program gave me opportunities to foster my leadership skills, engage with the community, and prepare for my future. With the help of ethnic studies, I got to speak to undergraduate students at Smith College to advocate for inclusive learning practices, as well as speak at the Holyoke Bound Conference my senior year of high school. Not only did these opportunities push me in high school, they went on to influence my college pathway. I'm a current senior at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts and will be graduating in December with a degree in political science and public policy, a minor in history, and as a member of our honors college. I'm also an alum of the Washington Center's class of 2020, where I spent the semester working in DC at Missoula Law. While a list of my current academic status may not seem relevant, it was all set in motion by the unique pedagogy of the Holyoke Ethnic Studies program and the guidance brought to me by Dana. The program sparked my passion for community organizing and a lifelong love of learning that I never thought was possible. These teaching practices offered a safe and collaborative classroom environment that I cherish even today. It is my understanding that the decision to eliminate the position comes with the idea of modeling ethnic studies as a typical department within the school. Ethnic studies is not a typical department. In order to continue with full effect the anti-racist goals of the school system, ethnic studies requires a position that can fully dedicate their time to this work. The work done by Dana and the amazing teachers included in the program cannot be continued with full efficacy should this position be cut. A typical department head who reports to people who, to no fault of their own, do not fully understand and appreciate ethnic studies cannot move freely enough. I greatly appreciate you all taking the time to hear my testimony. I am aware I am no longer a student and my opinion may seem unimportant. Yet Holyoke is my home, my community, and these schools and this program raised me. It would be truly impossible for me to hear this news and remain silent. My mother, my 6 brothers and sisters, and myself are all alum of the Holyoke Public Schools. We love this program, and the work the director position accomplishes must be allowed to continue uninhibited. We hope that the school committee will recommend to the superintendent and the cabinet to pause on this decision, seek input from the Ethnic Studies Community Advisory Board, and ultimately partner with the Ethnic Studies CAB and educators to conduct a nationwide search for a qualified full-time Ethnic Studies director. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brazo. I don't ever want anyone to feel that because they're in a different community that their opinions are not valued. I want everybody to make sure that they're aware that the Holyoke School Committee values everyone's comments, opinions, input. So thank you. Next person I have is Nashali Pagan Rivera.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nashali Pagan Rivera. I am speaking as a former student at Holyoke High School, talking about the Ethnic Studies program as well. So I graduated in 2019 from Holyoke High, and I am now a rising junior at Western New England University, majoring in law and society with a minor in criminal justice. Alongside that, I am also a TEDx WNE speaker and have other leadership positions on campus. That being said, I have a personal and deep connection to the Ethnic Studies program and Dana, for I was involved with them for about 3 years. When I heard the news about the elimination of the Ethnic Studies director position, I felt disappointed because the Ethnic Studies program is for the students of our generation and future generations to learn about things like intersectionality, race, ethnicity, and culture. Ethnic studies made a difference in my life because before taking ethnic studies, I didn't know much about my own culture and the different struggles that communities face due to different systemic and societal issues. This, alongside Palante, is where my love and passion for social and restorative justice grew. I am concerned that future students won't get to have access to what I had, and that upsets me because programs like these have helped me shape into the person I am today, fully aware of who I am and the work I want to do. We know that this institution is a top-down institution and that most decisions are not being made with community input. However, ethnic studies is not your typical Holyoke Public School program. They have succeeded in authentically engaging students, community, alumni in becoming really invested. This is something that the Holyoke Public Schools has attempted to do over and over, mostly unsuccessfully. With the current decision, you are asking the ethnic studies team to do things so much differently, not taking into consideration the hard work that those who've built this program have done over the years. I understand that you are doing things to help the ethnic studies program, but rather than making decisions without consultation, I would argue that it's more important to empower the voices and needs of those who this program is truly for. While it may not be the way you usually make decisions, we are inviting you to move toward truly becoming an anti-racist institution, even in the way you make decisions, by involving those impacted by them. To reiterate what others have said, I am joining the call asking the school committee to recommend to the superintendent and the cabinet to pause on this decision, seek input from the Ethnic Studies Community Advisory Board, and ultimately partner with the Ethnic Studies CAB and educators to conduct a broad search for a qualified full-time Ethnic Studies program director. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nashali. The next one that I have, again, another name that I hope I'm saying it right, Taina Garcia.
Hi, my name is Dana Garcia, and I graduated from Holyoke High in 2020. Ethnic studies was a powerful part and honestly the focal point of my experience in Holyoke High. I'm here to express my concern about the elimination of the ethnic studies director position. What bothers me most is that students, alum, and the CAB weren't included in this decision process. The program is really for us, and by us, I mean the students and the community which has worked so hard to build this program. A lot of what ethnic studies is about is community-based work and authentically involving students' real lived experience, families, and communities in our education. So finally, HPS manages to build something that really lives in our community. If you're gonna do that and say that you support it, you need to commit in involving that community that has become engaged and invested in having a real say in the program. When a few people at the top who aren't familiar and aren't even a part of the community for real make decisions, it has a big impact. It honestly says a lot about what they think about the students, the program, and their lack of understanding of what it's really about. I've seen time and time again that Holyoke Public Schools leadership undo the hard work that our students, parents, and community put in to try and build something that is really for us. And what stands out to me too is that then they wonder why families don't feel comfortable in getting involved, students don't want to get involved, and don't come there to their communities or meetings because they don't actually value anything we're saying. So with that said, I'm joining the call asking the school committee to recommend to the superintendent and the cabinet to pause on this decision, seek input from Ethnic Studies Community Advisory Board, and ultimately partner with Ethnic Studies CAB and educators to conduct a broad search for a qualified full-time Ethnic Studies program director.
Thank you very much, Dana. And again, I apologize. I should have went with the first instinct of saying Thana and not go with the second instinct. But thank you so much.
It's all right.
I don't see any other hands up, and as I've gone through my packet, I do see one other public comment that was directly addressed to the school committee. And I went through the names. I'm just going to look one more time real quickly to see. Yeah, no. So that person is not with us today, so I'm going to go ahead and read it so that everyone is aware of what we received. So it starts off with, Dear committee members, my name is Rihanna Cabrera. I am an ethnic studies scholar at Holyoke High School North. I will be reading from a letter by Cecilia Sanchez. I saw that name, so I might have two. I have been enrolled in ethnic studies classes from the 7th grade to sophomore year of high school. Ethnic studies has a special place in my heart and has helped me to name the type of educator I would like to become: a critical, courageous, and abolitionist educator. All the teachers that have taught me over the years are examples of teachers who have touched my life and taught me the importance of ethnic studies. The ethnic studies curriculum has shown me that I have to become a co-conspirator and not an ally, that I have to fight for my community, and that my voice as a young Mexican Puerto Rican woman matters. I had the opportunity to learn about my Puerto Rican and Mexican heritage through the program and was able to connect with my Hispanic identity. I have always felt a disconnect with myself and where I came from. Ethnic studies was an outlet where I could explore that side of myself that I never thought would be discovered. Ethnic studies taught me that knowledge is the key to set one free and ignite change. Every year, the students participate in YPAR, which stands for Youth Participatory Action Research. Students are able to take a leadership role and create change in their community through individual research projects. Without the Ethnic Studies program, this would not be possible. The effort and dedication that the Ethnic Studies director has put into the program has allowed students to participate inside and outside the classroom. Taking this role away would decrease the quality of the program as a whole. As administration, you should be prioritizing students' voice as an opportunity for students to engage in the anti-racist curriculum that extend beyond the classroom. This decision to remove the director position is an injustice to the entire student body and to your values as an anti-racist institution. I want to close by saying thank you to the teachers who have grown me and have walked in this journey of finding myself and who I want to become in the future. We as ethnic studies students and staff are working together to self-reflectively imagine a community while challenging systems with love and empathy. The Future Teacher Club 2021. Thank you sincerely, Cecilia Sanchez. We call on the school committee to recommend to the superintendent and the cabinet to pause on this decision, seek input from the Ethnic Studies Community Advisory Board, and ultimately partner with the Ethnic Studies CAB and educators to conduct a broad search for a qualified full-time Ethnic Studies program director. Thank you for your time, Rihanna Cabrera. Now, I am just looking here. Thank you, Rihanna. Because I know I had one. I am sorry. Oh, I've got it. One more. And this one's from Cecilia Sanchez. I've been enrolled in ethnic studies classes from 7th grade to sophomore year of high school. I am so grateful to be part of not just a program, but a community of students and staff that supports student engagement and involvement in the classroom. Ethnic studies has a special place in my heart and has helped me to name the type of educator I would like to become, a critical, courageous, and abolitionist educator. Teachers and educators such as I hope I don't mess it up, Miss Berard, Miss Maffey, Miss Lavodi, Mrs. Trial, and Dana Altschuler, the Ethnic Studies Program Director, are all examples of teachers who have touched my life and taught me the importance of ethnic studies. And the Ethnic Studies curriculum has shown me that I have to become a co-conspirator and not an ally, and that I have to fight for my community, and that my voice as a young Mexican Puerto Rican woman matters. And I think, okay, now I see where it's coming from. I'm sorry. So Brianna Cabrera shared that letter that I just read, and that's the other letter that was directed to us from Miss Cecilia Sanchez. Okay, so we are aware of that. All right, so that's all that I have for public comment right now. So that part of the meeting is now closed. I'm going to go back to the Student Showcase of Opportunity Academy.
You're asking us for comments? Is this the time?
Ms. Tensley Williams, we do not comment on public comment. That the only time that we have discussion is when that part of the agenda comes up.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, thank you. Now, we are going to invite Catherine, who's the Executive Director of Lighthouse, and Jasmine, as well as the other members from Opportunity Academy, so that they can present.
Here you go.
Welcome back.
Hi. Thanks everyone for working the meeting around our timing. And I know it's a sort of a lot to switch gears from that. That was really powerful, and just listening to everyone speak, just in my own place of it's so wonderful to see that outpouring of support and the community involvement. So I'm switching gears myself to get back to the Opportunity Academy business, and I'm sure that you are all as well. We are in a moment of celebration. We had a great year despite it all. We were hybrid and then more and more, and by the end, a lot of the kids in most of the time, which felt great. I was really happy to be getting back to having everyone on site. And we just had our graduation on June 10th, and we graduated 11 people, 6 of them through the Holyoke Public Schools. Really exciting. The program is going extremely well, and you know, even amidst the pandemic, holding on to all the kids and graduating everyone on time. So we have great relationships and a really flexible way of working with the kids, and so we were able to sort of roll into the pandemic with you know, FaceTiming and all the ways that it took to hold on to them. And everyone graduated on time, which we're super proud. So one of our recent graduates I'm going to introduce here in a minute, Jasmine Reyes, had a stellar year, stellar experience with us through the Opportunity Academy program, and we're about to launch our fellowship program in collaboration with AmeriCorps that is in no small measure modeled on the program that Palante has at Holyoke High. So we've borrowed a lot of their leadership training and inspiration from them, and we're really excited to bring that to Lighthouse, and Jasmine is going to be our first fellow. So I'm gonna call her over, and she was at Lighthouse for the last couple of years, and she's just gonna reflect on that briefly.
Hello, I'm Jasmine. I'm a recent graduate of Lighthouse, and I'd like to talk about my experience there. I ended up switching my junior year. I heard about Lighthouse through Palante because I used to work with them as well, and I made a big decision to change to help my education and better myself. And Lighthouse is definitely a bigger change than Holyoke High. I'm nervous, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But Lighthouse is a family. Everybody is very, very optimistic, very supportive. Honestly, I didn't think I would be able to graduate, and I actually ended up doing it, and I'm very proud of myself. So the staff there is amazing. Everybody is.
You're doing just fine, Jasmine.
I'm so sorry.
You're doing amazing. Just keep going. We got you.
Okay. I don't know what to say. What was the highlight for you? A big highlight for me was definitely pushing myself more forward. Honestly, if it wasn't for anybody at Lighthouse, I wouldn't be really doing this. I'm very shy, as you guys can see. Catherine is pushing me to do this, so I can't do this.
Jasmine.
Thank you for your time.
You're doing a great job. She left us.
Thank you all for the flexibility and letting us get Jasmine in there after the comment. We really appreciate that.
No, she did awesome, and we want to thank her. Is there anyone that has any comment or question for Lighthouse? Miss Burks.
So I'm hoping Jasmine can hear us. Jasmine, are you there?
She can hear you.
Is Jasmine still there? So Jasmine, if you can hear us, you did an amazing job. Speaking public is not easy.
Absolutely.
Miss Burks, I don't know if there's something wrong with your connection. She just went into mute, so I think there might be something wrong with the connection. But yes, Jasmine did wonderful. Hello, Catherine. It's been a whole year I haven't seen you.
I know, it's great to see, but we did get to see Twix. We had, so, for each year of graduation, we have a dinner the night before for the graduates, but in 2020, we were able to have an in-person drive-in graduation, but we didn't have the graduation dinner the night before. So we just did that the other night, 1 year later, with all of our graduates from last year. So we did get to see Twix the other night. It's great.
Yes. So, Jasmine, if you can hear me, I am a former mom of Lighthouse. I don't know if you saw that time capsule box. That's something that my husband had created so that you guys can put your memories in there and share with the other students that come along the way in the coming years. Lighthouse is a special place. That is a community. That is a family. And if it wasn't for Lighthouse, like I've said, my daughter probably would not have graduated. So I thank the staff at Lighthouse, and I know that you're going to do amazing in your career, Jasmine, and you're going to do wonderful things in the future. And I thank you for coming in front of us and challenging your shyness. Thank you.
Yeah, Jasmine is part, as I mentioned, is going to be our first fellow in our fellowship program. So she's going to have a year of leadership training coming up and a full-time position at Lighthouse doing a variety of things. So maybe we'll have her back for this meeting again next year and can see all of her growth.
Excellent. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Opportunity Academy, for everything that you're doing for our students. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and close the student showcase portion of it. We're going to move on to communications and reports with student reports. Did any of our student members, Ms. Puello, Ms. Brennan, no? They're not here today? Okay. So next on the list I have is the Metcalf School students to come to thank the committee. Are they on by any chance? They're not here? Oh, I know that they wanted to come and thank the committee and Mr. Soto.
Mildred, if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Brunel.
Yeah, so I know that I had mentioned it to my daughter recently, and she was excited at the opportunity, but they were never given the opportunity. So I don't know who was supposed to reach out to the principal or what, but according to her, no students were notified. Unfortunately, because I know they're very grateful.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
I can hear you.
All right. I apologize. So what I'll do is I'll definitely put them on the next agenda. And I'll reach out to the principal and stuff, make sure that we get them here. But I think our next meeting, depending, it might not be hybrid. It might be just in person. Hopefully, it's so much easier.
Well, I can bring my kid with me. LOL.
All right. So I guess we'll move on from that and we'll go on to superintendent receiver reports. And for this section, it's all you, Mr. Soto.
Thank you. We could get the slide presentation up, that'd be great. And I'd like to move to the 5th slide, please. The first item on the agenda, we're going to provide the school committee and the community with an update on summer school. We did provide an update at the last school committee meeting, and we said we would come back for this school committee meeting just to provide an update. So for summer school, rising 1st through 8th graders, we are going to be running a 5-week summer program that's going to start on July 6th, and it's going to run through August 5th, and that the summer school is going to run Monday through Thursday. So we will offer some in-person programs and some remote options as well. The locations are going to be Ian White for the lower elementary and dual language. McMahon's going to be upper elementary, and STEM's going to be running the Generation Teach program. And then we're also going to have an acceleration academy at Ian White, McMahon, Dean, and Holyoke High School. Right now, we have currently 187 students, and we continue to do outreach and hope to get more students enrolling in summer school. We're about 100% hired right now, but if we do continue to increase our enrollment, we'll make sure that staffing is appropriate. One of the programs we wanted to spotlight is the Somos Exploradores. It's a project-based learning, uses an award-winning JASON curriculum for science, so our students will get real hands-on experience. It'll be fun, and the curriculum will be embedded into the summer learning. Our rising first through third graders will get to build life-size coral reef models, and then our rising fourth and fifth graders will program robots and use them to find the wreckage of the Titanic. It's going to be a real fun experience for the kids, and we're really excited about that program. And then our academic interventions also going to be provided in ELA and math using Lexia and Do the Math curriculum. For the high schools, we're going to be offering at all 3 campuses. Right now, we have about 120 confirmed enrolled across all 3 campuses. That's Dean, North, and the Opportunity Academies. But we expect that the enrollment's going to be closer between 250 and 400 by the time we start summer school. So we're going to continue to do that outreach, and we'll make sure that staffing is appropriate as well. For the extended school year programs, we're going to be having it at Donahue, Lawrence, and Jericho, where we normally have it, the Transition Academy, and we'll also have some drop-in therapy services for students. Right now, we're currently enrolled at about 300, and that is increasing. Normally, we were right around 400 for the extended school year program. So the numbers just keep coming in, and we're really happy with the amount of students that are going to be coming for summer school. And that's another program that we're fully staffed right now, and we'll continue to staff as we get more enrollment.
Mr. Soto?
Yes.
For the summer school, when's the start date?
Summer school starts July 6th.
And that's across the board, so the high school and everything. Opportunity Academy, everybody starting July 6th?
Yes.
Through August?
Through August 5th.
August 5th. Okay. Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't see any other hands raised. Ms. Tensley Williams, do you have a question or a comment on the summer school update?
No, I don't, and I needed to talk about the ethnic group.
Not yet.
So
We're not there yet.
I'll wait.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so the next section of the agenda is our summer feeding program. It's very customary for us to come to the school committee around this time of year and just provide an update to the community and to the school committee of our food service program. This was the 4th year of a 5-year contract that we have with our partnership with Sodexo, and we recently went through a transition. Many of you may remember Ashley Plant. She has moved on, and she's working in Rhode Island right now, and we were lucky to have hired Tim Viverios, who's going to be the general manager. He's been working very closely with Ashley this past year and Deanna to make sure that the summer feeding program has continued and is serving the families in Holyoke. We have Dave Menzer and Angel Romero, 2 food service managers, and Jahida Santiago is our administrative assistant and breakfast in the classroom accountability specialist. Supporting that Core Holyoke group is the regional team in Kristen Morello, the Northeast District Manager, and Alyssa Knott, who's the Northeast Regional Dietitian. So we were really lucky this year. As many of you, the last time we updated, we discussed that the food service program didn't skip a beat. You know, once we got shut down in March of last year, we continued to open up our sites and to continue to feed students. We started with just breakfast and lunch and eventually moved into breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner, all while maintaining the guidelines, the COVID-19 guidelines, and making sure that everything was prepackaged as required by the USDA. So since April 5th, once we moved back into the in-person model, we've worked very closely with all the individual schools and made sure that whatever food service delivery models we needed to do, we were able to partner with the schools and do something that made sense for them. So might look different at every school, but we were able to partner with the principals and make sure that how we're delivering meals works for that school. Next slide, we talk, Lyman Terrace was an area that was very hard to reach. Because of the construction around there, we recognize, and the distance between that site and where we were serving our meals, we decided to start delivering meals there, and that has been really successful. I think we're reaching about 30 families there through a program that we partnered with Vanpool, our transportation company, and they're helping us get the meals to the Lyman Terrace community, which has worked out really well. And now for our in-person students as well, when they started in person, students were just taking breakfast and lunch home, and we were able to work with the schools and adjust our program so that the students that needed and wanted to also take a snack and their dinner were able to do so. And all of these efforts have worked, if you look at the next slide, to increase our meal participation significantly. You know, pre-pandemic, we were, you know, close to well over 80% out of a lot of our schools, and in some schools we were even over 90%. And then once the pandemic hit, you could see that in October we were serving about 30,000 breakfasts and lunches and less than 20,000 dinners and snack. And we looked at our numbers from May, and you can see that those numbers have increased drastically and in some cases doubled. So in May, we were doing 50,000 breakfast and lunch and 40,000 dinners and snacks, which is great to see students taking advantage of this program. Some of the things we did this year to celebrate staff, we had a continental breakfast across the district, and we also had a superhero lunch day where it was held on Friday, May 7th. Each cafeteria worker wore a blue superhero apron. It was very fun. Everyone was excited, and it just really commemorates the hard work that they did. And you know, our food service workers were heroes. When others were staying home and not able to go outside, our food service workers were there, making sure that our community was getting the services that they needed. We talked about, at the last meeting, we talked about some of the focus groups that we've had, and want to just mention that those focus groups have been very successful. We've been able to meet with students, and their feedback has impacted a lot of change in some of the menu options that we provided. And we're going to make sure that we continue to hold those focus groups throughout the upcoming school year so that we could continually improve the program. you can see here on the next slide, from those focus groups, we got a lot of feedback on what students liked, and we were able to incorporate that into the menu. And some of the feedback that we got was that we wanted to get some food that represented our community, and we were able to do that. We've implemented a few menu items like pavo al horno, habichuela guisada, sazón chicken sandwiches. We had pernil al horno and arroz con habichuela. Those are things that our students had asked for in their focus groups, and we were able to provide that. And we're looking forward to continuing things like that as long as that's what our students are asking for. And then our summer program, we are excited about a new change this upcoming summer. We're gonna have a mobile summer feeding program. So we're gonna have one of our food service trucks go to different spots in the community. We partner with community partners to identify some spots in the city where we could get some traction and really get out in the community and get these services to where they're needed. So this summer we're gonna have a mobile meal program that's gonna touch different sites. We're still gonna have our own sites in some of our schools, which I'll show in the upcoming slide. But we're also gonna have a truck going around the city delivering meals to different parks and different sites in the community. So where this rolling meal service is going to go, it's going to go to Springdale Park Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. to 15 a.m. It'll go to Carlos Vega Park at 11:20, Topfort at 11:40, Veterans Park at 12, Churchill at 12:20, and Bolden Village at 12:40. These were all sites around the city where we thought we could reach the most amount of families. And then, of course, we'll have our regular curbside pickup for meals at Donahue School, Lawrence School, and Morgan School. And we'll be able to offer that service Monday through Friday from 11 to 1. And it's breakfast and lunch. Any questions on the food service update?
I do not see any hands up. My only question is, this is also open to not only HPS students, but our HPS students who are also out of district placement?
Yes, any school age children.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is our fall sports, and I believe we do have Melanie Martin on the line as well, and Dr. Mahoney. We just wanted to say that we did have a successful year for sports. I know it wasn't traditional, but despite the COVID precautions and everything, we've been able to hold 4 short and non-traditional seasons in the fall, and then in the spring we were also able to hold boys volleyball, baseball, softball, wrestling. Those had tournaments at the end. Unfortunately, our baseball and softball and wrestling teams suffered some losses in the tournament this past week, and our boys volleyball was hosting Ludlow today at 4 o'clock. I'm not sure what the result was, but I hope they won. We're looking forward next year to having a much more traditional season in the fall for sports. We're holding sign-ups in person at Kelly and STEM through Zoom with Peck and Donahue, and we've dropped off packets at McMahon, Sullivan, and Blessed Sacrament, Mater de la Rosa, and the Holyoke Charter. Hopefully, just encouraging a lot of our youth to sign up for sports. So some of the notes that I wanted to say, we do have, I know that there was some concern around access to sporting programs now that we're one campus, or 2 campuses, 1 school. We do have a daily bus that goes from the Dean campus to the North campus, so that any Dean students that want to participate in sports, we eliminate that barrier of transportation, and they could get over to the North. And another thing that we have is wrestling is housed at the Dean campus. So if there are some wrestling students at the North campus that want to participate in wrestling, they're able to get bused as well to the Dean campus.
I do have a question for the fall sports update. Ms. Burks?
So I'm hoping you guys can hear me this time.
Yes.
Okay. So one of my questions in regards to like fall sports, but also, going into the winter and then the spring, with the two campuses, I know we have students from Dean that also participate in these sports, and I hear you when you say we provide transportation. But one thing that I would like to see is some of the home games that can happen at Dean also happen there as well. I don't think that they should all just be on the North campus. When we have athletes from both schools, I think, and we just did a bunch of work on Dean as well. So I'm thinking like, we need to share that. So like basketball games, for instance, we could easily have those at Dean as well, as North campus. But I really think that if we're asking students, to come together for this one campus and all be on one team, we need to also like let the Dean students have games in their home school as well. And I think it's really important. And I think it's the fair and right thing to do. So I would like to see that start happening, where we're actually sharing and doing whatever we can. Like obviously we can't do football, but there are some sports that can be done on the Dean campus. And I'd like to see some of our home games happening there.
Is there going to be a comment on that question, or is that just a comment that's going to be taken to advisory? And I'm hearing that the public is hearing me very low, so I'm not sure if there's something. I'm trying to get all up in this microphone, but I don't want to yell, and then people in the public are going to be like, oh my God, what's wrong with her? She's yelling.
We can hear you better now that you're speaking up, Mildred.
Okay, so I'm going to try to keep my voice as loud as possible. So, is there a comment?
Yeah, I'll just say, Ms. Burks, I appreciate your input. We do house wrestling at the Dean campus, so I'm not sure if Melanie Martin is on the line and wants to comment, but I could definitely take that feedback back to our athletic team. And I think that one of the things that is important in a decision like that is to get the students, feedback on that, and is that something that they want? Have the students at Dean expressed wanting to have sports in their building? I think that would be a big factor in how we move forward with making home games at the Dean campus.
But I also think it builds camaraderie, and it also, we're rebuilding Dean, one step at a time. And I just think like we need to be able to spotlight that school as well. And that's how they're going to continue to build forward. We need to get the community to come down to Dean and see what the school's done, where they're at, how it's looking like, and build that sense of community up for them as well. And that's why I think it's important.
Thank you, Ms. Burks. I don't know if the athletics director is available and wanted to comment on that or not. Is Mel Martin available? Or oh well.
I'm trying to get in here.
Oh, there you are.
I can't do the video. Oh, maybe I am.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Dr. Mahoney and I have spoken, and we'll speak more with Anthony going forward. We do have some opportunities to move a couple of the sports down there as far as, freshman volleyball and boys basketball at this point. Some of our concern is the cost of busing. We do pay for busing in both directions at certain points, depending on the athletes, and that continues to go up. And then, you know, just some of the other concerns I do have would be trying to figure out the logistics of parking and how people are getting into the gym, where the buses are parking. There's a lot that goes with it, and a lot of equipment that would need to be moved down to the Dean campus sporadically for games to be there. You know, as far as the medical support, athletic training room, we don't have that there anymore. And equipment that we would all have to move down there to actually run games. You know, not going against it, just trying to figure out, you know, what can we feasibly do with minimal staff that we have, and also being able to provide medical coverage for our practices that are going on at the same time as our games. And then the sports that would actually be feasible in the gym. Obviously the fields, unfortunately, that, you know, the football fields and things like that are not regulation and would not be able to be used for our varsity sports. So definitely worth more conversation, and see where we go from there.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, volleyball lost their game today and will not be moving on.
Thank you for the update. They're still a good team. Mr. Collmore.
Superintendent Studo, talking about physical for these students. At one time, they used to come to the school and we had a doctor there to give all the physicals every day. Now, I believe the students have to go to their own doctor and get a physical. Is there any way we can make arrangements to have a doctor come and give physicals, the ones that really can't get to their own doctor?
Is
Hi,
Ms.
Mr.
Martin
Kai,
still
Mr.
here?
Palmer. Yeah, that's actually came as a mandate from the state to not do mass physicals in the school buildings many years ago. We do recommend that they go to their own doctor. Their own doctors know their own personal history. And sometimes in the past with those mass physicals, some kids were being held out because of things that came up on their physical that they weren't being done with their own doctor. They might have known and said, okay, they can still participate. And other kids were being passed through with things that probably should have been evaluated and continued on with their own doctors. It's something Cynthia and I work with. I know that Teen Clinic has offered and done some physicals in school. There's walk-in clinics that we've tried to get people to, Holyoke Health Center, and then obviously the new pop-up clinics that kids can go to. They do charge a fee and usually go after their insurance as well. But the state, as far as I know, has not changed their methods on that, and it cannot be mass physicals done by one or two doctors to kids that they don't normally see.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Collmore. Thank you, Mel. Ms. Brunel.
Yeah, thanks. Kind of to what Rebecca's point was about having games at Dean. I was just thinking ahead to our strength in, recruitment at Dean and our increasing numbers at Dean. So I'm hoping that we're starting to see extra kids going out for high school sports. Obviously, with COVID, numbers were askew, but I hope that, in the not so distant future, if we end up having like way too many freshmen go out to have, that we're cutting, too many kids, that maybe Dean starts to get its own athletics again. Is that even possible, being that we are technically one school? Anthony, like, could Dean, I'm just saying, let's say Dean's enrollment gets really high again, right? So you have 60 kids going out for freshman baseball, let's say hypothetically. We don't want to leave 45 kids who want to play baseball not being able to play. So in theory, if that was to ever be the case again, could Dean have its own identity as far as athletics go? Or are we stuck to freshman JV varsity as a city?
We would have to go through a similar process that we went through before. And Mel, if you're on the call, I mean, I hear what you're saying. it would make sense that if you know the demand for athletics is so high, especially with enrollment coming up, that we definitely take a closer look at that. But I know that there would have to be a process that we follow with the state to make that happen. So I appreciate your comment, and we'll definitely look into that and monitor enrollment, and where participation, where the demand for participation is a lot higher.
Making sure, like, really strongly encouraging and making sure that Dean students are aware of the athletic opportunities and aware that transportation is provided. Athletics are really important and a really critical resource sometimes to getting kids to, be successful in school, right? They want to be on the team, so they make the grades to do that. So we just have to make sure that everyone's getting equal access to the athletic programs.
Correct, and that is a big push for us. We have a couple of coaches that are on the Dean and STEM campus, along with Principal Gates and their guidance departments, who really help us to promote. And I go down there as often as I can to talk to kids and let them know what is available. And we promote that in every piece of paperwork that goes out, that regardless of the campus, and the middle schools that I just did Zooms with, regardless of campus right now, you are able to participate in Holyoke High sports. And ultimately, I came here in 1993, so ultimately I'd love to see Dean back to its full Dean capacity, and at that point it would need to break away and have their own sports. And that would be great. I'd be back to the school committee for some budget items to do that. But we would love to have their own sports down at the Dean campus and separate into two schools. But some of the cautions that we need to do is trying to separate as Dean. I have to be cautious. There's certain programs, if we separate into two schools before they can support their own athletics, every sport becomes a co-op between the two schools. And that comes back to the MIA magic numbers. And I would not want to see athletes who couldn't participate because they're on the Dean campus and our co-op numbers are surpassing what the MIA allows for a co-op. If there's enough on one campus, in one school, they would make us not have a co-op. So I just want to caution that we look at this and evaluate it and make sure we're doing these in the right steps so that we don't lose any athletes in either campus. I mean, that's our ultimate goal, is to have the biggest percentage of kids participating on both campuses and have it work together.
Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Sheehan. All set? Mr. Sheehan.
I have a question for either the superintendent or Miss Martin. Have we had any interest in fielding any new teams? Maybe I missed that part because I stepped out for a second, but any new sports at all?
Currently, no new sports. I've had words spoken with youth directors for girls lacrosse, but at this time they only have 7 students who will be coming. So unfortunately, that is not enough to field a team.
For those 7 students, are those high school students, all 7 of them?
I believe so, and they're looking at trying to continue on with a lacrosse club in some way, form.
Or is there any neighboring community to co-op with that?
I'm going to be looking into that. I haven't heard of any at this point, but it's something that I talked to Ms. McKenna about, that we would look into that as well.
Yeah, I just think with 7, there might be, that's a pretty good chunk of individuals that may want to be playing the sport, if there's any community around here that also needs to field a team.
Sure, correct.
Great, thank you. So we'll keep moving on to the next subject. Mr. Soto.
For the next subject, I want to call Dr. Tiffany Curtis and Jenny Malave. Dr. Tiffany Curtis is our chief school officer, and Jenny Malave is our data manager. And they're going to be reviewing, as you know, we go through a panorama survey that goes out to all staff, all students, all families, and they're just going to be sharing some data that we got from that Panorama survey. Dr. Curtis?
Before, I'm sorry.
Superintendent Soto. So Jenny and I are excited to share with you the Panorama survey data tonight and the action planning that we did around the data. I am going to request.
1 second, Dr. Curtis.
Yes. Can you hear
Dr.
me?
Curtis, one moment. We do have a question. Mr. Sheehan.
So we've always had access, and I've logged into Panorama, and I don't see the results. Was our access taken away, or, I mean, we've always had access to the Panorama results and gotten all of the data.
Oversight. We can definitely get you connected. Jenny, when she pops in, I'm sure she can explain how we'll make that connection.
Okay, yeah, I'm logged in and everything to the HPS site. I just don't have my available results.
Okay,
we can definitely get those.
Yeah, with that, I'll pass it over to Jenny and she can get us started.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Curtis. And thank you very much for having us today. So obviously, we are here to talk about our Panorama annual survey. We've talked about this with you in the past. This is our 6th year using Panorama to assess our culture climate of our district. Every year, our Panorama survey surveys our students, teachers and staff, and our families. We were very encouraged this year by continued high participation in our student survey, with 65% of all of our 3 to 12th graders participating. This year, we actually had the highest participation rate we've ever had amongst our teachers and staff, with 79%. When we do look at our family survey, you'll obviously see a dip in our surveys that were returned to us this year. We think that this is caused by kind of a survey fatigue that a lot of our families were feeling during this time. The survey window happened to align quite well with our prep for coming back to school. So a lot of our families were being asked to take repeated surveys about planning for in-person learning. So we are anticipating next year that our family surveys will return to the similar participation rate that we've had in the past. Next slide. Very quickly, I just wanted to go over our favorability understanding. All of our questions are scored in terms of favorability, which always refers to the top 2 answers that questions have. So in this example, are your culture and native language respected at school? Almost always is 61% and frequently is 24%. So the favorability of this question is 85%. And that's how we'll interpret our data for everything moving forward.
Just before you continue, back to that first slide where you were talking about with the bar, no, the one before that. So on the chart that I have, like on the student survey, I just have the number 1, Ian White, 2, McMahon, 3, Hoyok-STEM. Where's everyone else?
So those are our top 3 schools for participation. So we had 94 participation at Ian White, 92 at McMahon, and 75% at STEM. So what we wanted to do on these slides was just highlight our top participants as a shout out to how well they did collecting.
Sure. Could you read off the participation rates for the other schools for me too, please?
Say that one more time.
Could you read off the participation rates for the other schools for me as well?
If you give me a quick moment, I will pull those up for you. Participation rates definitely varied by campus. Are you looking specifically for the student participation, or are you looking for something specific?
I'm going to want everything. I mean, it just to target in just what the best is seems to not be productive to a conversation.
Sure. For the student survey, Ian White had 94%, Gateway had 71% of students, Lawrence had 67%, Dean Campus had 37%, North Campus had 73%, STEM had 75%, Kelly had 68%, Sullivan had 71%, McMahon had 92%, Metcalf had 50%, Donahue had 62%, Morgan had 34%, Success Center had 30%, Veritas had 51%, and PEC had 67%. On the staff survey, we had 100% at Ian White, 58% at Lawrence, 64% at Dean, 88% at North, 100% at STEM, 93% at Kelly, 100% at Sullivan, 93% at McMahon, 74% at Metcalf, 87% at Donahue, 66% at Morgan, 58% of any staff that belong to multiple schools across the district, 100% of Success Center, 56% of Veritas, and 100% of PEC. And on the family survey, these are going to be in whole numbers and not percents. So these vary greatly depending on the size of the school. So you have to kind of take these numbers with a grain of salt. We had 179 responses at Ian White, 13 at Lawrence, 60 at Dean Campus, 230 at North Campus, 47 at STEM, 25 at Kelly, 81 at Sullivan, 61 at McMahon, 109 at Metcalf, 86 at Donahue, 26 at Morgan, 37 at Veritas, and 50 at PEC.
This is where I would need to learn shorthand because that was really quick and very hard to even keep up and write.
For
so
sure.
hopefully we can have a good discussion on this. But I think moving forward, maybe it's better that we have all that information and not just put the top three, because putting the top three doesn't help us to know which ones we need to work harder on. So I think it's important for us to see how everybody's doing across the board. Thank you.
For sure. And once you get those, the access to the Panorama's results, I believe you'll be able to see the response rates. But regardless, what I'll do is I will make you a table of the participation rates and we'll send it over to you guys.
It's
So
also going to be
on-
important
oh,
on
go ahead.
these
I'm sorry,
on these
Kevin.
charts too to see a breakdown by school as well. I mean, just seeing an aggregate isn't very helpful of the entire district, but seeing the breakdown. By,
Oh, that's what I meant. Yep.
do we have that? Because I didn't get that information then.
The breakdown of the questions by school or the participation?
So the only slides that we have, like in the following slides, there just seems to be an aggregate of, like what I'm looking at on the screen right now is just a 1 year change for third through fifth grade. It'd be much more helpful to have it broken by school.
Sure. So our goal today with the presentation was to give you guys a high level overview and explain our district level action planning. But the Panorama results certainly break down by school, and those results are definitely going to be available.
So I'm going to have you go ahead and do your presentation, but I'm going to be very honest with you. We're going to ask for you to come back where we have more detail. Rather than just having an overall, we like to see where it is. I don't like to show everything as though everything's honky-dory. There's always issues somewhere. So it's better for us to bring it forward and be transparent about it so then we can work together to improve it.
For sure.
Okay.
So we totally agree. So this year, what we did was we took the data and we broke it all the way down and we action planned at the cabinet level and at the teacher advisory group level. So we, what emerged for us was 5 high level trends that we needed to dig into and determine how to respond to as a district. So this data was just a very high level view. And then there's the last 2 slides talk about how we actually responded to the data that we have concerns about.
And I get it, but at the same time, when we're looking at it by school, so we have our 7 wards. I'm sorry, I keep closing my eyes because at the wrong time I put a cough drop. And I have a mask on, so it's really messing up my vision right now. There's 7 wards, right? So when we're seeing something within our own ward, or the schools that we technically would be representing, even though in my book we represent all the schools. This is ways that we can connect with our residents of our wards and finding out what exactly is going on, how we can help them better improve or whatever. So it's engaging the school committee. We're just not here just to hear things and call it a day. We're actually here to do the work as well. So I am more than happy to hear this presentation today, but like I said, our next meeting, I am going to ask you to come back. I'm going to put this back on the agenda, but more detailed, so that we can really have a good discussion. So right about now, what we're going to be doing is hearing what you guys have done and seeing your overall number. And then next month, or August, I'm sorry, because that's when we come back, we'd like to hear it more detailed, because then we do have a lot of work to do. It's just not the district leadership doing the work. We're all supposed to be working together, the community and the district. But I do see Ms. Burke's hand. Ms. Burks?
So I'm going to agree with both what you and Devin said. The only thing that I'm going to say that I think is a little different is that we are missing so much important data that I don't know how this presentation is going to be helpful at all. We need to know what the issues are. This is just highlights of, more positives. And we really need to understand which schools are struggling, why are they struggling, where are we having staff that really aren't satisfied. We need to understand that as well. And I don't like this breakdown at all. It gives me no information. It looks like people picked and chose what was important. And to us, all information is important to be able to help. So that's kind of my thought process. I don't have enough information to actually, to be helpful here, because we only got 1/3 of important information.
Thank you, Ms. Burks. Mr. Soto.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. We really, we weren't looking to highlight just positives here. This was a reflection of all of our, we dove deep into the data ourselves, and when we wanted to highlight some positive and then some areas of focus for next year. But I hear you guys loud and clear. You're interested in much more details, and we'll be sure to come back in August and provide you with more details. We'll provide you with details of a breakdown by school, and some of the responses. This wasn't intended to hide any information or overlook any of the negatives. It really was cabinet working together, dissecting the data, and coming to the school committee to present some of the highlights that we saw and some areas of focus for next year. But again, we'll come back in August and provide you with much greater detail.
Thank you. And go ahead, Miss Malabe. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I'm just going to go through the data very quickly so we can get to our action planning segment, which I think will give you more information. So a couple of the highlights that we saw this year are that at the 3 to 5 level, students are reporting that teachers are excited to be teaching classes and that students are trying hard to get good grades. We saw 15-point increases across the district. At the same time, we did note concerns of students having favorability ratings and feeling like they can change their intelligence and that teachers make them explain their answers. Next slide. These sentiments were carried over by our middle school and high school students on the 6th to 12th grade level, where we saw that students were echoing their sentiments of teachers being excited to teach classes. We also saw a large increase in students reporting that they had opportunities and activities that met their needs and interests. We think that this large increase was likely due to increased high school participation this year, where we saw North Campus particular have increased student participation. So we think that this reflects a slight shift in student voice. At the same time, two things that we really wanted to point out is that we continue to ask whether books and materials at school have people who look like you to our students. And This is only at 33%, which while is a 6-point increase, is much lower than we need in order to be saying that we are culturally responsive in our teaching. And so we'll talk about that in the action planning. And then additionally, we're very concerned about the level of connectedness of students across our district. We only had 26% of students report that they felt connected to students at their school right now. And we had a decrease in the students feeling connected to adults as well. And we'll talk about that in action planning as well.
I have someone, I have someone with a question, I'm sorry. Mr. Sheehan.
Yeah, so the questions here asked about, or that at least we have for 6 through 12, to do books and materials at your school have people in them who look like you. Was that question asked in the 3 to 5 survey?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, do you know what the result was on that?
It was quite similar in that it was lower than we wanted it to be. If you, once we get to the action planning side and Tiffany takes the helm, I'd be happy to look that up and get you the exact number, Devin.
Okay.
Next slide. We have highlighted here a few 5-year survey trends that we have seen over time. They are very reflective of what we saw in our 1-year change, where for a while we've been seeing large increases in teachers being excited to teach classes and students trying hard to get good grades. You'll see here in the 3 to 5 survey that we have highlighted the books and materials at your school, the same question. That's actually, yep, so there's actually your answer. It was 21% favorable this year for grades 3 to 5. And that actually decreased this year. And then at the 6th to 12th grade level, again, 33%. And while that has increased 11 points over the last 5 years, that is much lower than we would like to see it. And then we've also noted at the 3 to 5 level over the last 5 years, a decrease in students reporting that they know why something that they're working on is important to them as a learner, and stagnation at the 6 to 12 level. Next slide.
Can you go back? We didn't have that one in our packet, so I'm just trying to read everything on it. Okay, thank you.
On our teacher survey, we wanted to highlight that teachers were increasingly reporting that relationships were very respectful between teachers and students, with a 31-point increase this year. And also a highlight that teachers were feeling like students were finding it less difficult for them to get the support that they needed. Things that we noted as concerns were low levels this year of staff feeling satisfied with the current learning model at their school, 44%. And we saw a dip in teachers reporting that professional learning provided by central office improved their practice as a teacher. That decreased by 12 points. And we will highlight that in our action planning as well. Next slide. The staff survey is very similar to the teacher survey, but drops a couple of the specific teaching questions. So similar questions otherwise. Staff really echoed what teachers were saying, and that the relationships between staff and students were increasingly respectful this year, and that the working environment in the school was quite positive. Staff did note that there was a stagnation and feeling like the district was empowering school teams to impact change. And then a small decrease in feeling like they have input into important decisions. Next slide. A few things to note on the teacher survey for 5-year trends is that this respectful relationship between teachers and students is something that we've seen increasingly increase over the last 5 years, and similar with the positive work environment, gaining about 40 points with each question. But for teachers, similar to what staff reported in their one-year survey, over the last 5 years, we've seen very low favorability in terms of feeling like central office helps support implementation of school improvement plans and districts empowering school teams to impact change. Before I move on to the family survey, can I answer anything about the teacher and staff survey?
I don't see any hands raised in here, and I don't see any on the participant panelist section. So,
okay,
go ahead.
Next slide. On our family survey, we have noted small increases to families responding favorably to schools providing books and materials that reflect families' cultural background. That was a 4-point change. And that the schools expect students to do well and achieve success. On the flip side, we've seen small decreases in schools providing programming and opportunities to support children's learning at home and communication between them and their children's teachers. This is echoed on our next slide, our 5-year change slide. One of the things that we want to point out between the 5-year change and the 1-year change slide is that you'll note very low change scores, +2, -2. This is true across almost every single question that we ask in our family survey, that between our year-to-year survey and then over the 5 years, we've seen a large amount of stagnation in our questions where we haven't seen large increases or decreases in favorability. And that's something that we'll talk about in our action planning as well. So we wanted to note very similar trends from our 1-year survey. Next slide. And with that, I am going to send it back over to Dr. Curtis to talk through our data action planning.
Thank you, Jenny. Did anyone have any questions about the family survey data before I start?
I don't see any hands, and we didn't have that 1-year one. We had the 5-year survey trend, so we're just seeing whatever was there at that time. Okay. But I'm sure when you guys come back, we'll have questions.
Thank you. So the cabinet members reviewed the Panorama survey data and created an action plan in response to the 5 highest leverage trends that emerged as concerns, which were student and staff participation, family and community engagement, professional development, culturally responsive teaching, and student connectedness. The teacher advisory group also engaged in a similar action planning process to provide insight into how to use the data to engage in improvement efforts in these 5 areas. The questions in bold that you see on your slides are the questions that were asked at the TAG group. So for student and staff participation, these 2 questions were asked to determine how to sustain the increased participation in the high school students, which was what aided in the overall increased participation for students this year. So historically, we have not had a great participation rate from high school students. So we seek to understand how we can continue to engage them in their responses. There were also several schools, Ian White, Holyoke STEM, Peck, Sullivan, and the Success Center, who had 100% participation on staff and teacher surveys. So we recognize there's a need to continue to increase and celebrate participation, because the more feedback we receive from the stakeholders, the more information we have in strategically planning for the upcoming year. For family and community engagement, we want to make sure that parents and relative caregivers know that their voice, opinions, and suggestions matter. When Jenny talked about the data being stagnant, we wonder, is it because parents don't see how their input changes or improves the district. Therefore, we ask these two questions to help determine how to increase parent participation and also determine ways to share back the data with parents to ensure our community has insight into how their input has helped shape the decisions in the district. So we recognize that even though we seek and receive parent voice, they're not always informed about how their voice has impacted decisions in the district. For professional development, the Panorama survey data indicates that there's a gap between the real-time feedback we capture after district-based PDs and what teachers report on this particular survey. Therefore, we ask the questions to determine how to plan and facilitate PD sessions that ensure teachers and staff feel like professional development actually adds value to their practice and is meaningful to their professional learning. We can go to the next slide, please. Culturally responsive teaching. Although teachers and staff report that cultural beliefs and practices are prevalent in schools and classrooms, you saw in the data that only 33% of our 6th through 12th grade students reported that the books and materials used in the schools and classrooms actually reflect them. We thought it was important to ask these questions so that we can work to create better alignment between the experience of the adults and the children. And also acknowledge that this is in fact a gap in the district, what teachers report believing is the experience of students and what students are actually reporting is their experience. And then for student connectedness, finally, we recognize that some of our students have been out of school for over 18 months when we return in the fall. And although many students returned to school this year, they still were not connected to their peers in the ways in which they were before the pandemic. Therefore, we ask these questions in an effort to ensure that our summer work intentionally focuses on how to connect our students prior to the first day of school and potentially how to connect parents to the resources and services that they'll need in order to have a successful transition back into our schools. So these are the 5 priority areas that we set out around the Panorama data and intend to report back out to stakeholders how we in fact responded to this district this district data and the things that we'll be doing differently next year because of it.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised for questions. None in here. None from the panelists. But you know what? Almost forgot. And I'm sorry, Anthony, I'm going to take you back because I know that school just finished. So starting for the fall, right? Because anyways, we are talking about what we can do to improve. For the fall, are families allowed to choose whether they want to go remote or not, or it's just everybody's in person? That's it.
Everybody's in person.
Okay. So my other question is going to be in regards, because I know that we gave out
just before that, and that wasn't a district thing, Ms. Lefebvre. That was the state.
That's the state. Yeah, but I'm just clarifying.
Just so people know, that
I
wasn't
just
a
want to
Hoyle
make
decision.
sure.
That was a
So that's a
board
state. That's
decision,
from
yeah.
DESE. So that's a state decision. And it's for all districts across the Commonwealth. It's just not a Holyoke thing. So then my question is going to be on the, we gave out laptops and iPads, right? To students that needed it in order to do their work. What are we doing with those? Are they allowed to keep them so they can continue doing their work? What's going on? Bring it back next year? Utilize it to do their schoolwork, homework?
We're collecting those. We really think it's important that we maintain the one-to-one model that we have right now. So as many of you know, we were able to get devices out to almost every student. We got over 5,000 devices out, and we've been we're gonna be collecting devices on the last day of school for some students that have been in person. We've been making sure, working with them that we can collect them on the last day of school. And then for our remote learners, we're going to have, we've already communicated a process for how we're going to collect devices right at the school level. So each school has put together a device collection team, and are working with the school building leaders to do the outreach, and our family engagement team as well. We are doing a raffle so that students that have devices at home and they bring them in, they get entered into a raffle, and they could win different prizes by the end of the summer once we've collected all the devices. So it's really important for us to continue. That's overwhelmingly a significant amount of feedback that we got from our building leaders and from teachers, that students having devices is going to be important. So we're really making a push to get as many devices as we can back from our families and our students.
Oh, so we're going to use those devices in the school for them to actually do the physical work in the school next fall?
Some teachers may use them in
Okay.
different, they could be used for interventions. But what we're trying to do is get them back, make sure they're working, get them back in the charging stations, re-image them so that that all of the apps, all of the necessary apps that are required are on there, re-inventory them, and then make sure that by the time school starts in the fall, that we have a device for every student. And how that's used is, it varies by school. It's not going to be the expectation that students are sitting in front of a Chromebook all day. That's not the case at all. But how we were using them before the pandemic, and maybe, how could we use them better now that students are comfortable with using the Chromebook. There's obviously some lessons that we have learned during the pandemic, and using these devices is one of them, and students' comfortability with it is one of the lessons we've learned. So we're really making a push to get all the devices back.
I'm just wondering. Oh, I'll be right with you, Mr. Call. I'm just wondering, I know we might have some families that may not have the ability to have like a Chromebook, and maybe this was a way for the student to be able, to, let's say if they had to do like an essay or something that they can actually Google and find information on if they're writing a paper. Or even using it as an extra resource for when they go home from school if they have to do homework and math. Like, my way of math is a whole lot easier than the way of math of the kids nowadays, okay? And so you might have parents that just don't get the math, like I don't get the math. Then they can Google stuff like that and look at videos in order to do it. Is there a possibility for some to stay with the device so they can have that access? Or is it, no, they got to bring it in? But then what if some don't bring it back? Like, what happens then?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your first question, we'll work with families if that's something, if a principal reaches out to us and there's a family expresses, wanting it to continue their learning. Even for some of our summer school students, we're asking them to bring in the devices, and then they might get reissued a different device. It's really to make sure we have the inventory, everything inventoried, and we know what we're going to have at the beginning of the school year. But we'd be willing to work with families in that scenario if they feel that their child needs to continue with that. And the second question?
And what if they just don't bring it back? Like, I don't know. What happens, say they might have lost the charger. And now
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, I got to return this. I don't even have the charger. What's going to happen? Yeah, we'll be right with you, Miss Tensley Williams. I got a couple people with their hands raised, but I got you.
So we have, we have worked with families that had damaged devices during the pandemic. and we've worked with swapping them out. We're really making a push to collect. We do have the teams that we created at each of the schools are really going to be working with families to do that outreach. If if a device is lost or charger's lost or anything, we have come up with like replacement costs that we're communicating to families, and those that could pay for the replacement device, they would, and then we're gonna just work with families that can't.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the kids don't have repercussions from it. But okay, great. Mr. Collmore, give me 1 minute because I did see these hands up first. So I have Mr. Wellahan.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the survey responses. How were those responses received? Were they through the mail or through email?
So all of our surveys are done electronically. So for our students and then our staff and teachers, we roster those surveys directly based on our student information system. So every student grades 3 to 12 gets a personalized email directly from Panorama inviting them to take a survey, and it tracks whether or not they completed it. The survey itself is anonymous. We don't know whose answers belong to what student, but we can determine who participated. Additionally, for students, teachers by homeroom receive the access code for each of their students so that they can assist their students in logging on, especially for those younger kiddos. And so we track that through our 3-week window, and we send schools updates on who participated and who didn't. Similarly, on our staff and teacher survey, they get a personalized invitation from Panorama that goes out to every teacher and every staff member in our district. And this is not just building-based staff. This is central office. This is central supply. It's our paras, our janitorial staff, cafe, etc. And then for families, in the past, we have done a combination of both electronic surveys and paper surveys. This year, because of the pandemic and because of the difficulty with in-person versus remote, we didn't do paper surveys because we didn't have the ability to collect them safely. So we relied on our electronic surveys. We also did this, to be clear, we don't think that this really affected the participation rate at the family level. We did a survey in the fall in the same manner with our families, doing it completely electronically for an interim survey in the fall. And we got very similar participation rates to what we had in the previous school year, about 1,500 returned. So we do think that this lower participation rate in family surveys this time was because of survey fatigue. But because the family survey is a little bit more open to members of the community, we don't have that rostered specifically. We do text it and email it to all parents and guardians as connected to our school information system. We also blast it through school communications, through our Facebook page, on all of our social medias, so that we keep it open.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Kushane.
Hi, thank you. I'm wondering, was there any school improvement councils in any of the schools over this past academic year? And I'm just wondering, are those going to start up again if there were any from the previous year? I just hadn't heard anything about them in quite some time. And I was just wondering what's happening with the school improvement councils.
Niles, are these student councils or parent councils or staff?
So when my kids were at the high school, they're supposed to be improvement councils, and we had one at the high school that would meet on a monthly basis, and it's supposed to be comprised of staff, parents, teachers. It's one of the ways to get this kind of same kind of feedback, but in person, trying to make school improvements. On every single school is supposed to have one. And my kids didn't attend the grade school, but they were both at the high school. We had them for a few years at the high school, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything about them in a little while. I'm looking at this data and I'm like, sometimes getting, the in-person feedback when you're, how do we improve these things? That's the name of these. We're supposed to, by state law, we're supposed to have one in every single school. And I'm just haven't heard anything about any in quite some time. And I'm looking at these surveys. I'm like, what's happening? Are we going to go live with those kinds of meetings again at some point, or if there's any talk about that? And if I'm just totally, if this is out of left field, then you need to come back to that. That's fine. I'm just throwing that out there because when I'm hearing all this data and these types of questions, and I want to, what are parents saying? And I'm wondering, are we bringing parents in to hear what they're saying? That's all.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. As far as like student improvement councils go, I'll have to come back to you and get that information from the high school. We do leverage some of the existing parent groups, teacher groups that we have. So as Dr. Curtis mentioned earlier in her presentation, the Panorama survey results were shared with the teacher advisory group, and we went through an exercise where we dissected the data and had some guiding questions that ultimately led to the action plan that Dr. Curtis talked about. We also leveraged DPAC, our parent group, and other groups that we have across the district. But as far as the Student Improvement Council goes, I have to get back to you on that.
It's a school improvement council. School
okay.
improvement council. School council.
Okay.
Mr. Collmore.
Yes, the doctor Mr. Soto answered my question earlier.
Okay, great. Miss Tensley Williams.
Usually by the time I'm called on, either somebody's asked the question or they answered it. And I feel a little silly because what I needed to say was with that ethnic group after they had talked.
Not yet,
so I
Rosalie.
kind of feel like it's after the fact when I say something. I feel a little silly, but
no,
maybe
Rosalie, we're not at the ethnic studies department yet. But I'm going to promise you something. You're going to be the first one to make a comment. How's that?
I think that'll work.
Okay.
Thank you, hon.
So that's the next thing on the agenda. And I'll make sure that you will be the first one to comment. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Kershane, you still have your hand up. Are you all set?
Sorry about that. I'm terrible putting my hand down. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. So that's it for questions and oh, no, I'm sorry. Mr. Sheehan.
Yeah, I will say that it's Mr. Kershane who got me thinking about this, but I would be interested to hear if the school councils met during COVID, because, I mean, there was no relax in the law that they weren't to be formed or not. So, I mean, if Dr. Mahoney or Dr. Curtis could give an update at some point, since that, I mean, it does fall on the principals to establish that in their departments, if they met about that. And just to Ms. LaFave's question, just, I don't know how it came up in the agenda, but it came up just about the computers, that since she kind of opened the door with that. I mean, is there a reason why we'd, I mean, I get that we're a one-to-one district, right? Like, we changed our whole way of thinking due to the pandemic. I mean, and the work that your team did at the time to get them out, I mean, it was huge. I mean, the fact that we had students with devices when other districts were struggling to even order them since they were on back order from everywhere. I mean, so we're collecting them right now. I mean, did we not, were they being collected when school was still in like, how did that work? Because it also seems, I mean, I guess I just don't understand why we're collecting. I mean, I get that it's the whole thing with making sure they're still okay, but I assume that we had a whole maintenance system anyways. And we're taking, we still have families that have relatives that can't see each other and different things like that, students that are still learning. So we're also cutting off access to families that could have been their only point of access, not only to their friend in class, but also to the world if their families still are under quarantine for reasons, or are in contact with someone and have to quarantine for any given reason. Because I think it's you have to be 12 to get the vaccine, is that right? 13. So there's still a whole group of children that would still have to quarantine if there was exposure and things. I think students overall, I have not heard from any reports of any major issues with devices. Maybe there have been and we just don't know, but there's still families who probably rely on this. And we're a district that talks about equity, and we talk about providing openness for our students. And it just, to collect all these back just to pass them all out again in 6 weeks, right? 7 weeks. It seems counterproductive and a waste, especially if students are staying in the same building. Like, I get if students are moving buildings, but to take them back from kindergarten or first grade and give them back when you're in second grade just seems to be a lot. And if there's certain things that we learned from the pandemic, it's also like, I don't think a student should be on a computer all day long, 24/7, but I think there are ways that technology are integrated in. And if we ever have, or at some point, another global health emergency and we have to pivot on a dime, at least these would be out to the students.
Yeah, right now, we don't have a plan to just redistribute the devices so that kids are taking them home next year. We're going back to an in-person model, and it's just been expressed by pretty much every single principal in the district and a lot of teachers that now that each student has a device, that when we return in the fall, that they want to make sure that there's enough devices for students in the event that we would have to revert back to some sort of a different model, or use them the way they were used, probably not just the way they were used pre-pandemic, but use them more than we used them in the past, to do intervention work, maybe small group instruction. But that's been overwhelmingly, like, when we went out and asked about budget priorities to principals and our school teams, one of the things they asked us to prioritize was to make sure that we had enough devices come the fall, because there was a sense of worry that all of the devices that we have out there, there was a sense that, like, there's going to be some loss, and some damaged, and we want to make sure that we assess, whether or not that's a problem, so that we can make sure that we're ready for the fall. If we have to purchase additional devices, that we're ready to do that in time for the start of the school year.
Okay, and I get that, but I just, with the recovery money that both the district and the city is getting, and the investments that we've made, we have transformed some families' lives by allowing their child to have access to a computer, and that they don't have to go elsewhere for it. And with the way that publishers and educational providers have made a lot more, like, open source materials over the past year, and how we've, like I said, I don't think kids should be in front of a computer all the time, but to give students this world of access, and then just to say to take it away, like, I get that it's a budget priority, but and that principals have building-based budgets, but let's think differently as a district. Budget for technology differently then. Don't put that on the shoulders of the principal to budget for that. It's an opportunity for students that we're removing. And I'm not even talking about the access to internet we've provided, or those types of things. I'm simply talking about the device that we've already purchased. Like, it would, I just worry that we purchased these thousands of computers, and that depending on what school you're at, or depending on what teacher you have, like, you may not have access to that. And what have we done? We've shut off a world of educational opportunities for some students by doing that. And I just think that's really unfortunate. And even if a student sits on their district device and plays some educational games after school, that's still something that's helping their education, an opportunity they wouldn't have had. So I hope we can rethink that. And let's think differently. I mean, we have embraced technology for a year, and I think that just to cut it off overnight is a really hard thing when we say that.
So, and I'm gonna agree with Devin, and I guess maybe that's why I brought it up. Because I'm hoping that others might think the way that I'm kind of thinking. So we purchased them, right? But we did get CARES Act money, if I'm not. Was it part of that, or are we saying that that was part of our regular budget that you guys went out and bought these devices?
We were pretty close to 1-to-1. So we lease our devices. So we're on a 4-year lease cycle. A large part of money that we have used in the past has been Title I. So it's federal funding that does require a lot of, they require you to maintain a fixed asset record. So, and then when we did get that remote learning grant, we purchased additional devices. So we did use some Title I money. We used some general fund money in the past, and then now we have some ESSER money that we also allocated towards resources. So we just want to make sure that when we get them, that when we start school, that the devices are functioning, and that the way teachers intend to use them, they're able to. If we start the school year without having had a chance to refresh those devices, re-image them, and make sure that they're functioning properly, we could start the school year and teachers will start their lessons plans with hoping that the students have these devices available to them. We want to make sure that they are available to them come the fall. So I hear you. I'll go back to our team and we'll have this discussion. But we definitely want to make sure that come the fall, we have enough devices for every kid, for every student.
So I'm wondering this. I can see collecting the ones of the students that, number one, if we did give it to high school students that graduated, because they're going on their path, so that would be some that we could collect back to have, or students that moved to a different city and now they're going to a different school, collecting from them. But is there any way that we can just, the ones that are continuing within our district, within our school district, just keep them, and we keep track of who already has it, so that way we can reach out to the families and say, is the device still functioning? Because I'm sure they'd call you and be like, hey, there's something weird going on with the device. Again, like Devin had mentioned, it's equity. We try to talk a lot about equity. I mean, it became the next hottest word on the market, next to social emotional learning that everyone seems to be an expert on. And we talk and talk, but we ain't walking the walk. So, I mean, maybe we should be the first ones out there. We keep saying that Holyoke, make Holyoke to strive, and for people to look at us as a district moving forward. So maybe we just need to take that lead. Be bold. But that's it for that. We can continue. I'm sorry, everybody. I know it's getting late. We're almost there.
All right. I did want to thank Dr. Curtis and Jenny for their presentation. I know they put a lot of hard work into that. And we look forward to coming back and sharing more details at the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is the Ethnic Studies Department structure. So I had included in the packet a memo that we had written to the school committee and to the school community, the all staff, around a change in the Ethnic Studies Department structure. So what we had done was we officially recognized Ethnic Studies as a department. There was a position that was created that was written back in 2017. That was supposed to be a 2 to 3 year position. The title, I think, was a director of culturally responsive teaching and pedagogy. That ended up being the what we're referring to now as the ethnic studies director position. It was intended to be a 2 to 3 year position, and because we were still developing the curriculum with ethnic studies and growing the program, and now it's to the point where we do have really good programming from grades 7 through 12, and it was finally time to recognize the ethnic studies as an official department and set it up in a structure similar to other academic departments where there's a department head chair. I do want to say that I'm very appreciative of all the support and all of the public comment that we received today, because it's when people come together like that and advocate for students, it's a beautiful thing to see. Some of the things that I heard was this sense of fear that the program is going to go away or that services were being cut from the program. And I just want to really reiterate that we did not cut any programming for any of the students. In fact, we've increased the access. So to those former students that expressed being worried about the program going away, that's not going to happen. And this decision that we have made, was not designed to eliminate the program in any way. In fact, we wanted to make sure that other students had the same opportunities and more students had the same opportunities to access this programming as you all did. And we've also wanted to make sure that it's a sustainable model, right? The program cannot solely rely on one position. We need our academics team to be involved and just as involved as they are in other academic departments. So I've listened. I've heard a lot of the public. I've heard a lot from partners that work with the ethnic studies program. I've heard a lot from teachers. I've heard a lot from students, and overwhelmingly, like what was expressed was that a full teaching load and a teacher being able to assume those responsibilities that the director was doing was not feasible. So in response to that, we did decide to reduce the teaching load of the department head because we heard you. And we're also in the process, the person that was occupying that role expressed that for personal reasons, they're moving on for personal reasons. But she also agreed to come back on a consulting basis to help with this transition and to help with some of the grant work and responsibilities that some folks have expressed were going away. So we are still working with that person and hopefully can come to an agreement where on a consulting basis, that person can help support with some of the grant work and some of the transition of changing this structure. So with that said, I'll just open it up to anyone who has any questions or comments.
Well, the first one I'm going to start off with, because I promise, is Miss Tensley Williams.
Hi. First, I would like to say that I am all for the ethnic program. I'm all for that. And I just want to say this. I am a product of racism. Okay, I know this stuff at firsthand, and I know how it works. Growing up, I heard it said, and I'm going to quote, the only way to keep a nigga down is keep him down south. Now, I'm going to be saying graphic things, and then the older I got, I heard people say, if you can't keep a nigga down south, then keep him down in his education. So then a lot of the funds were directed away from the areas where there was either low income or from the people who lived in the projects, while mostly people of color lived. So the supplies and funds needed was not there. And I believe this is why busing started, because they brought the kids out of that low-income school areas to give them a chance to learn, to be equal opportunity education to learn, as students living in the upper echelons had. I'm all for the ethnic studies program, and I hope that this project is not lost. And thank you for that, Mr. Soto. I'm happy to know that. Okay, thank you, Ms. LaFave.
No problem, Ms. Tensley Williams. Is there? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Ms. Tensley Williams, thank you for that, and I can assure you that you know that this program is not going away, and there were no resources eliminated from this program financially. What we did was convert a position into a structure that already exists with other academic departments, and they have now they have a seat. There's more responsibility on the academic team to make sure that this program is successful. So a lot of the things that the director was doing is going to fall on the department head. We've freed up we've reduced the teaching load so that some of that work can happen during the school day. And quite frankly, there's going to be some other people at the high school that might have to take on some of the, there was some concerns around developing partnerships with higher education. We do have a position at the high school that is going to assume that work for the ethnic studies department. And then, the academics team is going to also support. So Valerie and her team, we're going to be monitoring this closely. I think we got a great plan, especially now with the person that was occupying that position, willing to come back and help with the transition and particularly this new grant that was written and making sure that it's established. And we're still in conversations. So we're really looking forward to that. And we're monitoring it closely.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Mr. Sheehan? Ms. Tensley Williams? Yes, thank you. Mr. Sheehan?
I didn't have my hand up yet.
I'm sorry. I don't see anyone else. So did you want to go? Or if not, I'll go. Okay, gather your thoughts. Okay, so I'm hearing both the district, just as I sat here and heard some of those that came and voiced their concerns. I also read the material that was sent. So there was one part that I heard, and then I sat down and I reflected on that. It was during the comment part, where in the district we talk about equity, and we've created throughout, ever since we went into receivership, we started creating all these different types of task force, right? And each of these task force was to improve something. But it seems like those task force, little by little, just dwindled. And which is true, because I remember the mental health task force. I still don't remember, I don't know how it just disappeared. And mental health did not disappear. Actually, it just got worse. Okay? And that was supposed to, that group was to help design or figure out how we can help our most vulnerable students and those that suffer with mental health. So you even had the Department of Mental Health there, which is one specific group that is always eliminated or not even consulted in when we're talking about mental health. Instead, we include DDS, and that's it. And then whoever we have for within our district. But DMH, which is the agency that works with families and the children that suffer with mental health and getting them services that they need, they're not included. So in this one, they actually were. I think we probably met maybe 7 times. And then all of a sudden, there was no moving forward. I don't even remember what we even created or what we were going to do or what we were going to talk about. Then came another one after that I remember Miss Burks being at, and Miss Rebecca Burks, but as well as Miss Mary Burks and myself. and Miss Curtis. There were quite a number of people that, and we were in parts of groups, and then they presented something else, and I still don't know what came about of that. I look at ethnic studies where we're doing something that's positive, right? And it's bringing a lot of change, and it's really focused. Like the people that are working and doing this work are really focused on that to make it lift up and not be forgotten. Now we're saying that we're going to take that and we're breaking it up. I get it. I get what you're saying, and your hopes is that it's gonna work, because everybody's saying no, we're gonna make it work. But we have too many people getting involved in taking a piece of something versus holding accountability to one specific person to ensure that a curriculum such as this, a curriculum that changes lives, changes mindsets, that can be impactful to the community, that person will be held accountable to ensure that it never gets forgotten and the ball's not dropped. But when you start having multiple people in this one's going to take care of this, that one's going to take care of that, but the department head not only has to do the teaching, and you did minimize, I don't know what you minimized it to. What does that, how many classes does that teacher, with the department head?
I believe it's 4.
Okay, so it would be 4 classes, but then we'll also have to take on the some of the other tasks that a director would have. We're putting a lot on that one person. Now you have this consultant, but when will the consultant come in? It's like having the consultant on the IEP. It's rare that they're even used. They're on there, I don't even know for what. But how do we know that that person is going to come in and actually be able to do the transition, be able to do the additional grant responsibilities? I know we want to be out there saying that we're improving this study and making it more accessible to all the students. I just don't want us to slap us in the face later because we let the ball drop, because we thought that everybody else with these good intentions of picking up extra work was willing to actually keep it afloat or keep it up there. So I'm quite impressed with what this person has done. I don't know this person, but let's just say the position itself with what it was supposed to be doing and the connections that it made, I think that is important, because we don't want to lose any of that, right? Because once you start losing that, then it's like the program's going to go down. That's what will eventually happen. We talk about wanting to listen to our students, but we're not listening to our students right now. This community advisory, not the I don't want to say the wrong one, the advisory board for the ethnic studies. So now there's a big group of them, because I saw the list of names in one of the letters. If we created that and expected that to be done, I would have thought that we did talk with them and kind of brainstorm ways to improve. So, I mean, those are just some things that I'm throwing out there, Mr. Soto. I know you're trying your hardest. You really want to see this district move forward along with us, right? You really have good intentions. But I also know that we also have to be very realistic, and knowing that sometimes when we try to make these changes and we're not really listening, things end up going backwards. I do not want to see Holyoke always going back negative, because that's nobody sees the good, but they will definitely always catch on to the bad. And this, like they did say, it is not your typical it's not your typical math curriculum. It's not your typical social studies curriculum. English curriculum. This is its own unique curriculum. So we really do need someone who is going to really focus on that. Whoever that qualified person would be, there you have an advisory board that's willing to be a part of that, to really find someone who's qualified to keep making this program soar. Maybe we can even expand it so that it's taught even in younger classes. We got to build on this, not block it. That's just my 2 cents. Well, Mr. Sheehan, now you need to wait. I have Miss Burks who raised her hand when I started. So, Miss Burks.
So Mildred, I think you made some valid points. I just have a couple of questions for Anthony. So when I had originally reached out in regards to this, it was that the teacher was going to, the department chair was going to be teaching 5 classes. I had done some additional reach outs, and one of the major things that teachers and department chairs have brought up is that their workload currently is so ridiculous that they can't have a good balance of being a chair of a department and servicing their students, and making sure they're doing an excellent job at both, because it's just too much. And I'm worried about our teachers having a really good home work-life balance and being able to be home and be parents or family members or siblings or children taking care of parents. You know, I'm worried about our teachers being able to do that with the amount on the workloads that we're giving them. We're losing teachers at an accelerated rate. And when I listened to this discussion in regards to this program, and then hearing some of the feedback from, you know, community members and teachers and staff members that say, you can't have 5 classrooms and then also be chairing a department. Like, it's not possible, because one of the 2 jobs will not be done 100%. So it's either our kids are going to suffer or the department's going to suffer, in the sense we're not going to have this equity that we constantly rave about. Dropping it down to 4, you know, you're going to still service 4 classrooms. So we'll give you 1 free period. 99% of our teaching staff don't even get their prep periods. They really don't get their prep periods. Like, they're working through it. They're dealing with kids that are having issues at home. They're doing 1,000,001 things. And they're going home at night and they're working nonstop. And like, I think if we've learned nothing from this pandemic, the one thing that we need to take away is we need to value our staff. And right now, I'm really concerned, because what I'm hearing is that we want to offer great programming across the board. I just don't think we're being fair to our teachers. I think we're spreading them too thin. And in the end, our students are going to really suffer from that. And so, I have concerns. I don't think 4 is fair. I think that we need to, if we're asking somebody to step up and do the work of a department head, we need to have real conversations about what they can take on, because we don't need to lose any more great teachers in this district. And I think we've got to really start focusing hard on our school staff and making sure that they have a good home work balance, to make sure that we're really going to retain good teachers. But this highlights a lot of problems. This doesn't highlight, just an ethnic studies problem. Through the conversations that I've had, it's not just, it stems from other problems. And I just want to make sure we need to start really putting a spotlight on our teachers and what they need to keep and retain them. Because right now, what we're doing clearly isn't working. And listening to what the compromise was, I'm not happy with that. If they're saying that they can't do it, it's too much. And all we're willing to do is take away 1 class. It doesn't seem fair. So that's my point. And like I said, I'm just really worried about our teachers and our staff.
Thank you, Ms. Burks. Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you. So Just have a couple questions, and more for clarity as I've been trying to understand the structure of this. So right now the person is the position is a director position, correct? That. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Like, I'm just trying to figure this all out. So it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's a position that's in the HTA. It's not a director, like a licensed director position, like some of the other academic. You know, our academic directors are 12-month employees, and they're not in the teachers union. This particular position is a teachers union position, 10-month employee.
Okay, so, and the proposal is to make this a 7 to 12 department chair. Is that
department chair? Yeah.
So are there? I guess what I wonder about when you think about like, I mean, some of the conversation has been this is different than math and science and English, and I agree with that. I think it is different. Is there those other contents aren't 7 through 12, right? They're like the math department chair covers Holyoke High North and Dean, but they're just 9 through 12 department chairs, right? Guiding the work of the math department. And then like Dr. Brandt covers math for everyone, including the department chair, but like provides that support for the elementary and secondary or elementary and middle schools, right?
Right.
Okay. So is there going to be a cohesive, I guess where I'm torn on this, if we're talking about making this a elevated position, I mean, was there any thought, and I mean, here's the thing, I respect all the decisions that are made by the district overall. I'm just wondering if there was any thought into looking at it differently, instead of doing the department chair route, actually making it a director, like 12-month position that focuses on ethnic studies, equity, and that area of the district, and leading some of this work. So it's not, so ethnic studies is not just a 7 to 12, but it really can be working with the other academic directors and making this a cross-curricular program. Because I will say, I think that it would probably be difficult, I think, and just for even a department chair or a coordinator or whatever it may be, just working at the high school and working with other departments and finding the time to do that and coordinate with that. But if there was any thought into making this like into elevating this into a 12-month director position, like just at the org chart that I look at here, and having it be one of the positions that works for the chief instructional officer with those other individuals, just to elevate this, to really provide that cross communication, to give this the that level of working with the other directors at central office and being able to coach teachers and be in classrooms and that type of stuff, and cover all of those grade levels, to really have it be an open. But I'm just wondering if that was thought about, and I just thinking about how to elevate this. And I believe that everyone who came up with this plan thinks that it was elevating that position to cross over all those areas, but I just wonder if that was thought to really help drive the district's work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna ask Valerie to chime in here as well, but we did have those conversations, and you know, the context of those conversations is that culturally responsive teaching and really eliminating institutional racism and being culturally responsive has to cut across all of our content areas. Ethnic studies is an important part of our equity work. It's definitely an important part, but the equity work doesn't just live in the ethnic studies department. Valerie, you want to?
Hi, yes. So I'm unable to start my video, so I think Sam's going to help me with that, and so that you're not talking to just a letter on the screen. But so Devin, you raise a good point and talk about the coordination of there we go, of the other academic departments. And over the past 3 years, we have coordinated with the lead of ethnic studies currently. That individual either met with me on a monthly basis or with Sue Huckle, the ELA Humanities Director. So the directors at the district level, 12-month employees, licensed as directors in their content areas, not in the HTA as Mr. Soto mentioned, do coordinate from grades K through 12. So in content areas. And so they very often meet with the department heads at the secondary level on an ongoing basis to account for curriculum vertical alignment. And we are doing the same in social studies. We focused heavily on ethnic studies in grades 7th and 8th first, and aligning those content areas with the ethnic studies department, doing some incredible work to align those courses to the Massachusetts frameworks. And we are in current talks with piloting some content at the younger grades at 6th grade and below, but also want to make sure that it does align with the ethnic studies curriculum. So the outcomes that you're talking about are things we're working on now. And whether or not we thought of adding another directorship, we really, we've talked about that in a couple of different ways, but both Mr. Soto and I feel that growing at the central office level doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and we'd rather have more school-based instructional staff. And so this is kind of the best of both worlds with that concerned, because the individuals that serve as multi-grade level department heads do have a point person in the academic department that they check in with on a regular basis. So I agree with some of the other comments made around the workload, and Mr. Soto was correct in saying that the course caseload for classes for other district department heads, district-wide department heads, is at 4 or 5, but we're in talks to make the ethnic studies director, department head position rather, have even a smaller course load in the beginning, in order to allow that other work with the community and some of the other job duties that were described that you heard earlier today to be able to happen within that time frame.
Yeah, I guess, like I said, my reservation is being able to fully support that that 7-8 area when it's isolated to. I mean, here's the thing: if you have a course load, I mean, it's going to be hard, even if you have 3 classes, to run out of Holyoke High or Dean, or maybe the department chair could be a 7th grade teacher. Like, who knows where this person is going to be with that supports this program. So, I mean, it just seems like that's difficult when you think about trying to support all of those areas with that. And, I mean, just like I said, the thought of that I just worry that some of those conversations that you had talked about, that the current coordinator works with the directors, the ESE licensed directors, non-HTA members, that some of that may be diminished as well, just out of sheer timing. And that's more of what it is, like the amount of time in a day to be able to do that work. And that's why I said, if we're really trying to lead not only ethnic studies work, but equity work in the district, looking at doing another licensed ESE director, like an actual, or a supervisor in that area, with a license that can actually coach and work with teachers and do some of that to help guide that work and throughout the district. That was my only point. Like, it's more the hours in the day portion of it, and to be able to work with those students and teachers.
It's a good point, something for us to discuss further. But again, important to note that the current individual who held the position did have a course load of 1 course. And what we're looking to do is add just a few more on top of that, not make it a full teaching load. A lot of the work was done on the side as well. And the individual who was leading that was stipended for that additional work. So we want to make sure that that opportunity is there for that can be spread across our ethnic studies teachers as well, and they can kind of share that collective leadership, where the department head would be in charge of certain work, obviously, and then for curriculum work, the team has has participated in that together. There's work that happens over the summer. If there's someone else who wants to lead that, they would be stipended for that work. So, so that's kind of what we're thinking about moving forward. And again, it wouldn't have the same teaching load as other district-wide department heads have right now. That is something we want to look at on a whole, what Mrs. Burks was talking about. We've started discussions with the high school around how do we free up some of the teaching duties for department heads who are at least beyond just the high school level. So those who are covering either K to 12 or 7 to 12. And that is something we're going to have to address over time. There's a few departments that don't want us to reduce their teaching load because they really want to grow their programming, such as our music program would be an example of that. And so when we're in a better place to reduce their teaching load, we'll continue to make strides towards that as a goal. We are differentiating this and seeing this as a greater need, and therefore do want the ethnic studies department head position to have even a lesser teaching load than the other department heads because of that level of work that you're discussing.
Mr. Colmer.
Yes, on the grant itself, is it about to run out or not about to run out?
No.
No. So
this person would help, facilitate what the intentions of the grant work is, and they would also be supported by our grants director. We have a grants director in central office, and we have a financial analyst that would be assigned to this person as well that helps with the grant work.
on the grant itself, is there any specific items on the grant that have to be done? Or is it just a blanket grant for,
It's to support the ethnic studies program. Valerie, do you know the specifics of that grant? I think it was 25,000 or 10,000.
It's a $25,000 grant. It has some, off the top of my head at a late night, I'm going to try not to look something up so we can keep it succinct for you. But there is a lot of work, Mr. Colomar, that goes into the management of that grant. It's around strengthening community partnerships with some of the higher ed programs that we have. It is directly linked to creating a teacher pipeline from recent graduate students, who are from HPS, who are interested in continuing leadership in the classroom. And so that's like a broad view. I'm sure I might be missing some of the key points, but again, I'll look for that while you're talking about other things and see if I can pop in, but that's the general idea. So this person, the oversight of the grant would work with the grants manager director on the fiscal management of the grant, but also the coordination of the programming and the action steps outlined in the grant is what would have to have strong oversight and leadership in.
Do you have more?
yeah, just one of my concerns is if this grant runs out, do we have another one coming in to replace it, or do we just drop the whole program?
So the grant is to enhance what we have, not to supplant our current fiscal support for ethnic studies. So in no way would an additional grant to develop out a separate component of the program impact what we are providing to the students. So ethnic studies is a core curriculum that we are dedicated to, that we want to maintain in the district and have increased access for students. So that's not going to go anywhere. And we will work with the grant around sustainability. Usually when you apply, you have to write what your plan is for sustaining the work. And I'm sure that through the tenure of the grant, as we work through that, we'll have some sustainability plans in place to maintain services.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to address really quickly the audience that is watching through the webinar, because I do see 2 hands up. What I don't want to sound like I'm being rude or anything, but we cannot take on, I cannot call upon someone who's raising their hands in the public to comment and have the discussion through the school committee. So I will not be able to call on you, but you can reach out to us. You can give us a call, you can send us an email, kind of, if there was clarification that you wanted pointed out. And again, I apologize for that. So now I'm going to ask specific questions because I think I'm. So, Mrs. It's Anya, right? You know.
Anya. Or just
Yeah.
call me Valerie there.
Okay,
either way.
Valerie. Okay, Valerie. So, I'm not going to talk about who this other person was that's currently doing the position, isn't doing the position, because I'm not here about that person, but what I'm here for is the program itself, okay? So let's look at it, a program director. So the program director position, you're saying we're going to move that out, right? And we're going to do department head. What will you be responsible for, Valerie?
So that's a really good question. I do want to mention, as Anthony had mentioned earlier, that the position was never intended to be in place for long term. It was to establish the program, and it had like a phase out written into that. This, we're at that time, we're beyond that time. And so I currently meet with the individual who runs the programming on a monthly basis for the past 3 years, given any scheduling conflict. So I'll continue to meet. Additionally, I meet with some of the other K-12 department heads once a month. And so I'll continue to maintain that type of like one-on-one being in the know with the programming, to support with finances, to help them support with, sharing, vetting curriculum, things of that nature. So that personally is something that will continue. My department provides financial support. We will ensure that they have what they need in order to teach. We coordinate with the school leadership where ethnic studies is being taught. I'm also ensuring that we are having ethnic studies teachers in all of our schools for grades 7 and up. That is something that 3 years ago was not the case. There were a few schools that had removed those positions in lieu of other needs, not intentionally against it, but just trying to prioritize what they needed. And so we're making it, holding accountable that those positions are in place, and then working with the department head and the school leadership to ensure that we're able to maintain all of the functions that were happening before. We've outlined some of that in a letter that Anthony had sent out to staff around some of the concerns we heard with certain aspects of the role that would be hard to maintain. At that point, I believe that the concern was thinking that this would be a full-time teaching position, and they're right. At the time, we did say it would operate like other department heads, but as Anthony had mentioned earlier, that has been heard, and it will be a significantly reduced course load in order for the majority of the time to be spent on coordinating the programming. While also increasing access to ethnic studies courses at the high school. So by having a few courses for that director or department head to be teaching, we now increase access for our high school students to courses, to ethnic studies courses. So we feel that it's a good balance between. So we'll work with them on establishing and maintaining, they've already have an established curriculum, but maintaining regular reviews of that, supporting them with, if they need stipended work, helping with the professional development, a lot of the same ways we're supporting now, and then working with the high school to ensure that some of the other duties that were concerns that we've appropriately assigned them to other staff within the building that take those on. For instance, one of the concerns was dual enrollment, and having that having students be able to have the opportunity for dual enrollment purposes. And we have staff at the high school who coordinate college advanced learning and dual enrollment placement. And so this will just naturally fit within that current role that's already established at the school. So that was pretty long-winded, but I'm tired. So I'm going to be quiet and see if that answered it for you, Ms. Lefebvre. And if not, please continue to ask.
Well, I think I'm going to be very short and to the point, where you said a lot of things and a lot of ensuring this and ensuring that, and you guys are meeting with this and meeting with that. And at not one point does it ever look like maybe things might have, or someone may have dropped the ball somewhere because we're doing so perfect in this district. Now, we're putting a lot of responsibility on different people. So you're saying that you meet with the program director monthly to ensure this, but now it's going to be the department head, correct? The department head that has a drastic change in their schedule of teaching. They went from 5 to 4. And expected to take on all of these other responsibilities. Does the department head for math do grant writing, and do they reach out to communities, organizations, and try to build, or I don't know, maybe even some field trips? Does the department head for math do that?
So school leaders, school staff do.
No, the department head.
Do write grants. It is not an expectation, but they do seek out grants and do write them with other team members. They also, I forgot the other part of your question. So yes, there is some grant writing. Yes, they do. Other departments are responsible or do organize field trips. That is something that falls under department head responsibilities with the support of the school leadership. They do that. We have dual enrollment for coordinators that help with that particular piece. And I apologize if you think, in no way am I saying we're doing everything great. Absolutely not. I'm just telling you the structures we want to put in place to ensure that this program continues to run.
So what got this program to where it's at right now? Was that you guys at Suffolk Street?
That was
the program director. That's
the position where that held a one teaching course load, was able to spend 90% of the time ensuring that the programming was able to be maintained.
I'm looking at it
and
this
did
way.
An incredible job in developing it. This in no way is any indication on that individual's work. Respect that individual. I think they've done an incredible job and have put us in the right place to be able to continue that work in a different format.
There's a saying, and I think it is, don't break what isn't broken. And I kind of think that's what's going to happen here. And I'll tell you one thing. I don't know about what you guys, how other people feel, but my goal is to get out of receivership. How do we get out of receivership? By moving our students forward, by bringing change, by showing that we're top notch. We care about our community. We care about our students. I don't want to hear next year when we're going to be here and it's like, well, ethnic studies went down the dumps. Or there's inequities now. And why is that? Because maybe somebody dropped the ball, somebody didn't do this, or nobody's really doing the connecting work with the current organizations that they're currently working with. I mean, we developed relationships with colleges. We've developed relationships with different organizations, and it's kind of who's going to take over that. Remember, when you build a relationship, you build trust, right? That's how you build a relationship. And for some odd reason, Holyoke always seems to break the trust. We are so famous for that. We love to change stuff around because we always think that it's for the better good. Well, I really need to see what the better good is for. But I honestly do feel we really need to then. Now I am agreeing with the fact that this does need someone who's actually going to be held accountable. I like to hold people accountable to their job. I don't like to have to look at 5 different people because then the other one's going to say, well, I didn't know that was my job. Then the other one's going to be like, I think that's her job. No, I want to already know whose responsibility is it, because if it's not something that's moving forward and there's a problem, then that's the person that we should be going to. Not having 6 people and one's working on one thing and then stepped on the toes of the other or didn't do their job because they thought the other one was doing it. Do you understand where I'm coming from, Valerie?
I
Okay.
do.
I just want to make sure that you
I do
understand
want to
that.
say that we can certainly give you updates as we move forward. There is absolutely no doubt that we need to ensure that all of our programming is up and running and providing the highest quality education that our students deserve. We know that we're in receivership, and I agree. We want to be out of receivership. That would be great. That's the goal. Our number one, I think it's important for us to note that this is a very important curriculum. We have embedded this as our social studies curriculum in 7th and 8th grade, meaning that it's a required core content area. We believe strongly in that, and we believe that more students need better quality access to it at the high school level as well. That said, and that the community partnerships and the advisory boards are an amazing component to our anti-racist work. But it is not the only avenue of our anti-racist and equity work. And I think it's important for us to note that. Our number one goal, my number one goal as your chief instructional officer, and you would want this to be my goal, is to ensure that our students are entering those classrooms in 7th and 8th grade, fully literate, fully reading on grade level or above, being able to problem solve on grade level or above, so that they can fully engage and be consumers of the curriculum that is in front of them, to develop their lens to be social change agents, which is part of the curriculum, and that they're able to advocate for that change beyond. And so, and I feel strongly and have not been shy about saying that I do believe that this curriculum needs to be in place and that we're going to maintain that. How we structure the oversight of that is at question here, and I understand that and appreciate all of the feedback. This was a joint decision with district leaders who felt that this is the right time to move in this direction because of the hard work that has been done to establish all of this. Maintaining something that's already of high quality is different than trying to build it from the ground up. And so it's time for us to adjust with the fact that we are seeing successes. We are not going to back down from this, from having ethnic studies, nor are we going to come away from our ultimate goal of ensuring that our students are receiving the highest state education that they can receive, so that they can be successful beyond. That to me is one of the biggest equity issues we have. I don't want us to continue to move students forward that cannot read and problem solve and do other academics on or above grade level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Do we still have an equity task force?
So
we do. Anthony can speak to that.
We did.
yeah, we do, and this is, thank you, Valerie, for providing us with an update. We'll certainly take all of these conversations into we'll bring back and regroup as a team and provide the school committee with an update. We do. I want to make sure. So one of the things that I'm noticing is that we have to provide not the school committee, and we also have to provide the community with an update on our race and equity work. And I'm going to be working with Dr. Curtis. It's important to know what we've done so far towards that work, where we're at, and where we're headed. And I've already spoken to Dr. Curtis about this, and I'm going to be glad to provide an update to the community and provide an update to the school committee around where we're at with that work, which ethnic studies is definitely embedded in that work, but there's a lot of things going on that we're not talking about today, and I think it's important that the community knows where we're at with that work.
That would be great, but so you're saying that you do have an equity task force?
We had one.
You had.
We had one where Dr. Curtis, if you're still on the call, I'd appreciate you coming on camera. Dr. Curtis is leading the equity work in our district. She's been doing a lot of professional development, not just at cabinet, but we're working with principals this year around courageous conversations about race. And we're going to be engaging with a partner this upcoming year so that we can continue that work and so that principals can bring that work back to their schools and really have courageous conversations about race and anti-racism. Is Dr. Curtis still on the call?
Yes, I'm here. So yes, we did in fact have an equity task force, and that task force was really a community-based task force. So in Holyoke Public Schools was one of the organizations on that task force. So what we did this past year is we took our experience and learning as part of that task force and said, as an organization, we have to strengthen the race and equity work within our own organization. And so we started at the highest level, the systems level, with all of the chiefs and all of the principals, and we created a roadmap. We essentially published a roadmap of learning for this year, and we completed the full roadmap. We were in partnership with the organization Great Schools Partnership that also helped us with some of the community work we had done. So we had been in partnership with them as part of the Nellie May grant. And so we finished our year of learning. We are in partnership with them still because we wrote a second grant so that we could continue the work. And we're scoping out the work for year 2 and year 3. So year 2 does call for the district to create a district advisory board, which would include different layers of leadership from within the district. So teachers, principals, paras, district level leaders. And that advisory group would help push the learning down to each school. And the goal would be that each school would go through their own unit of learning for the second year, which would be next year. And then the third year would produce a school-based equity team at every school in the district. So it's a 3-year progression of work. And that's what Anthony is talking about, communicating out the actual race and equity work that we've been doing in the district. We've also created through the HR department affinity groups. So we've had racial identity work going on with white educators, as well as celebratory spaces for people who identify, professionals who identify as people of color. So we've had multiple layers of the work going on this past year. And like Anthony said, we just have to communicate it out better. Which may be why the ethnic studies team we haven't had an intersection of all of our work together.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. So that data, is there a way that we can get it from the task force that you had, from whatever it was data collection that they were doing? I don't know what the data was collected on. Is it the survey that was presented? Well, then what's the data that's being collected? Did you mention? Yeah.
Race and equity work. So we collected baseline data at the beginning of this year from all the participants. So all of the chiefs, all of the principals. So we do have that baseline data, and that baseline data was an indication.
I have a point of order.
I mean, ethnic studies was on the agenda. If we're going to talk about other reports, I mean, I'd like to have the information in front of me before we delve into other reports and other topics.
Okay,
I mean,
so we'll bring that up at the next meeting. We'll bring that up at the next, we're going to bring this back in the August meeting. But my point was, I asked if there was an equity task force because one of my comments is that we build task force, but then they dwindle. And again, going back, is that what is going to happen with this programming? That was
No.
the bottom question, because again, we're talking about even creating another advisory board. Well, you had a CAB for the ethnic studies part, and so we're creating advisory boards too to get back feedback, but what feedback and when is that feedback going to be used? So we're just going to close that topic for tonight. Moving on to the next one. Teach Western Mass.
Next topic is Teach Western Mass. I was asked to provide a quick update on Teach Western Mass for the school committee. This program is a way to attract more teachers, especially teachers of color from non-education backgrounds. The first cohort, our only cost was for residents, and the residents paid their own tuition. The first year was school year 18-19. We had a cohort of about 4 residents, and the fee for each resident is about $4,000, which was paid off of turnaround funds. So that first year, we ended up using some turnaround grant money to pay the $16,000. And then if we could move to the next slide. Here's some retention data, which I was asked to provide. So in cohort 1, we only retained 25% of that first cohort. Cohort 2, 67%. And cohort 3, 75%. And right now, as of June 14th, we have 15 teachers in the cohort. In total so far, and all of this has been supported by the Teacher Diversification Grant. So in total, the cost was about $423,000. This for these 4 cohorts, and it's all paid for by grant funding.
The Teacher Diversification Grant?
Yes, the first year was the turnaround grant, and then the following 1920, 2021, and then for next year is paid for by the Teacher Diversification Grant.
Okay. Are there any questions on that? See any hands raised on the screen? None in here. So that ends it for the superintendent receiver reports. And next item on the agenda is the new business, which is fiscal year 22 school department budget.
I had presented the budget at the last school committee meeting. I included the entire budget document in your packet. We just had a public hearing. We had it available for public viewing since Wednesday. And just overall, I want to really thank the team. As many of you know, this was a very difficult year. Not just, I mean, for everybody, it was very difficult, but especially a coming budget season with the transition happening and me having to do both roles. A lot of people really stepped up. You know, I want to shout out Tiara West, Amanda Smith, and a lot of the people that really helped out in developing the budget and putting forward what we're really excited for. We have, we're blessed to be able to get some federal funding. I've talked to every single principal, and the principals have all expressed like next year they're really excited. They have more resources than they've ever had here as a principal since in the last 5 years. So it's really exciting to hear that. Our investments in academic intervention, our investments in coaching and counseling, and really just getting the supports that our students are going to need come the fall. We're really excited about that, and that's what the budget represents, is all that great work that we look forward to engaging in.
Thank you. Mr. Wellhan.
Thank you. Thank you, for the budget. The, details are very good. Just on the, I know page 72 here of the, handout, just the, line item for, emotional support for the students, psychologists. That was flat from last year. How have the resources been done for this year?
Yeah, that's for the most part, we have psychologist positions in our schools, and it is a coincidence that it's relatively flat. When we do lose positions, we budget based on averages. People come in with different experiences, but that's really to maintain the level of services on the general fund. Because keep in mind that when you're looking at this financial information, the majority of that is only what's on the general fund. So we'll have the same amount of psychologists that we had. We are increasing our counseling supports. So we looked at, we go through a collaborative budget development process with our principals and with our department heads that manage a budget, and they develop a budget from, we give them a staff allocation, and then we give them a per student allocation. And this year, one of the major changes we made is that it's no longer a decision whether or not a school needs a counseling position. We eliminated that from being a discretionary item. We know that based on the number of the services that are required in IEPs, and the fact that we know a lot of our students had experienced trauma during the pandemic. Counseling supports is going to be high in the priority, and we didn't want that to be a decision point on the principal, so those positions were allocated this year.
Okay, thank you. Just to change topics, to capital planning. I'm just looking over the schools. I've been saying this for years, that it's just the amount of deferred maintenance that's going on from school to school. They all need roofs, all need boilers, the security systems, got bathroom fixtures. I graduated from high school 35 years ago. These bathroom fixtures are 20 years before that. Okay, so, from the 50s. Okay, I mean, where is our plan just to get these schools up to snuff?
Yeah, we update this capital plan probably every 3 years. So next year is we're up for a refresh. We try to pick off maintenance as it comes up. So towards the end of the year, if we're looking, if we can reallocate some resources towards some of the maintenance that you're talking about, like getting, replacing the bathroom partitions, we literally meet with the principals in the middle of the school year, and we tell them we ask them what are some of the projects that you'd like to see happening in your school, and they put together a list of those priorities. So throughout that work, we've been able to accomplish a lot, and not even include it in this capital plan. The things that are on this capital plan are things that, we can't use general fund money to do large capital investments that are above $250,000. It wouldn't count towards net school spending. So what this represents is what we ask the city. We submit this to the city as part of their capital planning, and whether or not they bond for some of this work or fund it, that we're getting them the information. I'd love to be able to do all of this, but doing all of this means that the city would have to, bond for it and invest it. We're getting them the information. And like I said, every year we're trying to pick off those little things that we can do to keep our buildings in good shape.
I mean, in good shape. I mean, what they gotta do to, to get a new faucet? What they gotta do to get a new toilet in a bathroom, I mean, does it have to just crumble down to dust for that to happen? I mean, again, I keep going back, deferred maintenance. So, I mean, whoever's taking notes on the minutes here, that's what I've been saying for a number of years, just deferred maintenance over, 30, 40 years. I mean, if you tell me these fixtures were from the 80s, I mean, no one here on the Zoom has bathroom fixtures from 1975, right? Okay, that's just a fact. Here we are, bathroom fixtures from, again, the mid 50s. My father was in high school in the mid 50s. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Wellahan, if you have details on, failing faucets or failing toilets, I'd love for you to be able to share those with us, because if we have broken toilets, we fix them. If we have broken fixtures, we fix them. We're regularly, our facilities team goes out on a monthly basis, touches, each principal is assigned a facility's main point of contact in addition to their senior custodian. And those are things we'd love to hear and we'd love to get ahead of and fix.
Thank you, Mr. Wellahan. I don't see any other questions. I don't have any questions in here. So thank you for the budget. Moving on to ongoing business, there's nothing. Any announcements other than wishing everybody a safe and happy summer? Enjoy your month off next month. Do you have any announcements? No, there's no meetings coming up or anything, right? I know the special education PAC, they did their thing, the end of year drive-by. Aaron, Miss Brunel.
So I don't have an announcement, but if you can just on ongoing business, now that it's closer to the start of the next school year, if we could follow up maybe for the August meeting, Anthony, to have an update about the math curriculum and where we leave off now that you might have some enrollment numbers in placing students. I'm sure we'd all like to know how many students are being placed in Algebra 1 as a one-year course, AP level, and the Algebra 1 BA or whatever you're calling it that's been split into the 2-year course. I want to stay up to date on that and make sure we're getting updates, make sure it ends up being properly staffed. Just want to get another update on that at the next meeting, perhaps.
Thank you, Ms. Brunel. And I wrote it down here, so that's also for next meeting in August. Okay. Well, there's no other announcement.
To adjourn.
Oh, we got a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Collmore. Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy, Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Ms. LaFave,
Yes.
Ms. Brunel. Ms.
Sorry,
Brunel,
yes.
Ms. Tensley Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Burks,
Yes.
Ms. Feliciano Sims, Mr. Wellahan,
Yes.
Mr. Callamore,
Yes.
Mr. Kershane.
Yes.
Motion passes. Meeting adjourned 9:24. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in August.